Chapter 878. Jun Mengchen fought against Yi Qianchen while Zi Qingxian fought against Qin Ta. The two of them exchanged opponents. Feather King was still fighting against Mo1. Feather King was the youngest king of the Winged Devil race, while Mo1 had the Frost King physique, akin to an ice goddess. Gusu Tianqi walked towards Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King. He, Gusu Tianqi, was first in the first round and second in the second round. For this final battle, if he was the first, he would eventually be the first. But if the first position was seized by Hua Taishu, he would have no chance to be the first. For this final battle, he had to obtain the first position no matter what. Fighting against Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, was his first battle. From Gusu Tianqi, a scorching heat akin to the scorching sun radiated forth. In the air, numerous suns appeared, congregating in the center of the constellation furnace. This furnace seemed to be able to incinerate everything in the world, possessing an unparalleled destructive might. Ruthless devil might towered up into the sky. An ancient devil appeared, wielding a pitch-black devil spear, exuding an imposing aura. Gusu Tianqi stared at this devil with a calm expression. Since Qin Wentian could defeat Ruthless, how could he not do the same? If he wanted to be the first, he would trample Qin Wentian under his feet. It was just that from his perspective, Qin Wentian, Hua Taishu and Feather King, the threat they posed to him was much greater. On top of the furnace, an unparalleled divine light shot out. It was like a dazzling flame spear that could pierce through a person's body and kill them. Ruthless devil might gushed forth. With a wave of his hand, a fearsome pitch-black devil shield appeared, allowing the fiery spear to shoot towards him. Ruthless remained unmoving. Gusu Tianqi waved his palms in the air, as the light from the 9 blazing suns frenziedly shot into the furnace. The furnace trembled violently as terrifying rumbling sounds could be heard. After which, within the furnace, a blazing long spear that resembled the sun slowly materialized, descending from the air and landing in Gusu Tianqi's hands. This long spear radiated boundless divine light as flames blazed around it. Stepping out, Gusu Tianqi's silhouette exploded forth as his long spear shot out. The terrifying sun spear penetrated through the heavens and earth, wanting to annihilate everything in its path. The ancient devil in the air howled in rage as numerous black spears erupted forth. However, when Gusu Tianqi's sun spear swept past, everything was destroyed. With a thunderous boom, the devil's shield shattered, and only when Ruthless and Gusu Tianqi's sun spear collided together did Ruthless manage to block the attack. However, they only saw Gusu Tianqi standing at his original location. A battle art manifested from his body as he waved his hands in the air. Instantly, numerous sun spears appeared from the terrifying furnace, causing people to feel a deep sense of awe and veneration. Against Gusu Tianqi, Ruthless was clearly defeated once again. The spectators mused as they watched on. Gusu Tianqi was simply too powerful, the #1 genius of the Eastern Prefecture. He had a single disciple for 9 generations, and every generation had immortal kings. Even the lowest achievement he had was at the immortal king realm, an innate king. Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, although his potential was limitless and his combat prowess was tyrannical, he lost to Qin Wentian in the first battle. For the second battle, he would lose to Gusu Tianqi as well. There was no suspense. In this case, Ruthless no longer had any chance to enter the top 3. The battle between Feather King and Mo1 is extremely intense. Some immortal kings turned their attention to another battle. In the 4 directions, for battles between geniuses started simultaneously, causing the spectators to be unable to take it all in. It was extremely fascinating. At this moment, Feather King seemed to be borrowing the astral energy from the starry space, resembling a devil king of the astral skies. His wings were incomparably dazzling, gleaming with terrifying runic inscriptions. Mo1 floated in the air, akin to a goddess of ice and snow. Her coldness was completely unleashed as a world of ice and snow appeared in the air, fighting against Feather King. Jun Mengchen's combat style has always been the most direct. Yi Qianchen's sword strikes were exquisite, while Jun Mengchen used brute force to break his sword strikes. He transformed into a supreme king, letting out a roar of rage that caused the heavens and earth to tremble. His war chariot smashed through the air, akin to a chaotic flood of chaos, unexcelled in this world. Although Yi Qianqian's sword strikes were powerful, he was still in a precarious situation under that tyrannical attack. Zi Qingxian and Qin Ta's battle was equally fascinating. Zi Qingxian transformed into a divine hawk, while Qin Ta was like a heavenly deity. In terms of offense, Zi Qingxian was clearly inferior to Jun Mingqian. She had no way to fight like Jun Mingqian, clashing head-on with Qin Ta. She could only use the advantage of the speed of the Divine Hawk to unceasingly launch attacks at Qin Ta. The speed of the Golden Flame Divine Hawk was simply too fast. This was especially so when Zi Qingxian unleashed her bloodline power, releasing divine might. The shadow of the Golden Flame Divine Hawk enveloped her entire body. In a single breath of time, she flapped her wings 100 times and transformed into a beam of light, unceasingly blasting out fearsome divine hawk beams. Qin Ta's heavenly deity form attacks would always pass right by her. Such a stifling battle caused Qin Ta to go berserk. The heavenly deity constellation in the air suppressed everything, wanting to bury this entire space. Zi Qingshuan's wings flapped as countless divine falcons appeared in the air, instantly shooting towards Qin Ta. Qin Ta let out a heaven-shaking roar as he blasted out with both his palms. The gigantic palm imprints blotted out the entire space, resembling a true heavenly god. Rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as more and more condors flew towards the incoming palm imprints, as though they were committing suicide. Another boom rang out as a terrifying golden flame condor slammed into Qin Ta's palm imprint. However, at this moment, the palm imprint was directly penetrated through as a beam of light shot towards Qin Ta's head. Qin Ta's countenance drastically changed. He hurriedly used his palms to protect his face, only to see that beam of light directly piercing through his chest, tearing out a piece of flesh and blood. When he opened his eyes, Qin Ta lowered his head and glanced at his injuries. After that, he inclined his head and stared at Zi Qingxian in the air as he spoke. "Your advantage in speed is too great. My attacks are definitely not inferior to yours. But you have lost." Zi Qingxian emotionlessly spoke. She only cared about the ending. "I have lost." Qin Ta's countenance turned ashen. He had lost 2 rounds consecutively. This was a humiliation. He had no fate with the top 3. At this moment, Yi Qianqian let out a roar of unwillingness. His body was flung through the air, similarly defeated by Jun Mingqian. Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian were both in extremely miserable states. The two of them were chosen by Jun Mingqian and Zi Qingxian, becoming stepping stones. Or more accurately, they were chosen by Qin Wentian. Naturally, there was no helping it. Qin Wentian and the other two had very low rankings in the first 2 rounds, and were targeted by Dong Xingting. This was the final battle, and they had to appear in the most domineering manner possible. Even if Dong Xingting's schemes caused them to be unable to stand among the top 3, at the very least, they had a clear conscience in their hearts. They did their best and did their best. For the top 10, they had no way to control the first 2 rounds. This final battle was the only thing they could control. Naturally, they had to do their best. No one would be able to obstruct them. "Senior brother." Jun Mingqian called out to Qin Wentian when he saw that Zi Qingshuan's battle had ended. How should they fight next? At this moment, Qin Wentian noticed that the battle between Feather King and Mo1 had also ended. Their battle could be said to be heaven-shaking and extremely intense. At the end, Mo1, a disciple of the heavenly talisman realm, was defeated by the number 1 genius of the Western Desert Prefecture, the young king of the winged devil race, Feather King. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. The 2 battles between Jun Mingqian and Zi Qingxian were already sufficient to leave a deep impression on the spectators. Next, to Jun Mingqian, he needed a victory of a heavyweight level. "Mingqian, you will fight Feather King." Feather King had already defeated Mo1. In addition, Feather King would definitely fight Ruthless next. As long as Jun Mingqian ended this heavyweight battle and defeated Feather King, his remaining opponents would only be Gusi Tianqi and Hua Taishu. As for the others, he could directly ignore them. There was no need for him to clash with Mo1. Right. Jun Mingqian's eyes flickered with excitement. Fighting Feather King? He naturally could tell that Feather King was one of the strongest existences in the top 10. This battle caused him to be extremely excited. How arrogant! The spectators at the immortal banquet all sighed in admiration. Qin Wentian's battle actually allowed Jun Mingchen to challenge Feather King. How tyrannical! Feather King stared at Jun Mingchen walking towards him. His countenance flashed with sharpness as the violet gold wings on his back fluttered. Dazzling runic patterns could be seen on the surface of his wings. His wings were like an invincible divine weapon. Earlier when he fought against Mo1, his wings gave Mo1 an immense sense of threat. Qingxian, you will fight ruthless. Qin Wentian spoke to Zi Qingxian. Right. Zi Qingxian nodded as she walked towards the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King. Ruthless, he already had 2 defeats on him. This fellow, it seems that the final battle of the top 10 will be decided by him alone. The spectators stared at Qin Wentian. He stood there and watched as Jun Mingchen attacked Feather King while Zi Qingxian challenged Ruthless. In the blink of an eye, the 2 battles had become extremely violent. This was especially so for the battle between Feather King and Jun Mingchen. Both of them were like kings. Feather King's violet gold wings flashed as he continuously attacked, exuding an aura akin to thunder. Jun Mingchen roared in rage, causing the entire space to tremble. Qin Wentian's countenance was calm as he watched the battle between the 4 of them. He couldn't see through Mingchen's trump card, but he knew that it was definitely extremely powerful. It was like he could borrow a supreme power to augment himself. Although Feather King was very strong, Qin Wentian believed that Jun Mingchen would be able to win against him. He had already tested Ruthless' combat prowess. Although Ruthless was powerful, Zi Qingxian should be able to win as well. As for himself, he naturally couldn't fall behind. He stepped back and stared at Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. The 2 of them were also coldly staring at him, their eyes flickering with an intense anger. Are you angry? Qin Wentian glanced at the 2 of them and spoke. If you are angry, then come at me together. Although the rules don't allow us to gang up on each other, I'm willing to fight against the 2 of you. None of you will be a match for me if you fight alone. Boom. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Qin Ta stomped the ground ruthlessly. With a howl of rage, the entire space trembled. Yi Qianchen was like a heavenly god descending from the heavens as a towering storm of sword qi manifested around him. They were all geniuses of the top 10, but Qin Wentian was arrogant enough to tell the 2 of them to fight together. One of them wouldn't be a match for him. Chapter 879. You are truly arrogant. Qin Ta's voice was hoarse. His body expanded to 10 meters in size, resembling a heavenly deity as he stared down at Qin Wentian. Behind him, the shadow of a 10,000-meter tall heavenly deity could be seen, capable of crushing all living things. Qin Ta was the 2nd ranker of the Western Desert Prefecture, a genius from the heavenly deity race. On the day of the final battle, he suffered 2 consecutive defeats. Right now, Qin Wentian was arrogant enough to challenge the 2 of them. Boundless sword might revolved around Yi Qianchen as he walked step by step towards Qin Wentian. Their rankings in the first 2 rounds weren't high, but weren't they filled with an intense battle intent as well? They wanted to prove themselves in this final battle. This way, even if they couldn't enter the tutelage of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, they would still have a chance to be accepted as a personal disciple by a powerful immortal king. But now, he had become the target of Qin Wentian's trampling. The 2 of them actually planned to gang up on Qin Wentian. This was something Qin Wentian had said himself. At the immortal banquet, all the experts present would bear witness. In that case, Qin Wentian would pay a price for his actions. Boom. Resplendent light circulated around Qin Wentian's body as runes flowed on it. It was as though he was clad in a demonic armor. His body expanded to 10 meters in size, similar to Qin Ta. Behind him, a pair of dazzling golden rock wings could be seen flickering unceasingly. Every time they flapped, a strong gust of wind would be generated, tearing apart the void. A violet gold astral soul flashed as his suppression constellation manifested in the air, exuding boundless might. His right hand wielded a sharp sword that gleamed with blood-colored light. He was like a king wielding a sword, looking down on the world. Runic light flowed around his left palm, exuding a fearsome might. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen closed in step by step. When they sensed the might radiating from Qin Wentian, their countenances grew colder and colder. At this moment, Qin Wentian activated his battle art. His already dazzling body once again shone with a dazzling light. It was as if his body had metamorphosed and he had turned into a battle king. Boom boom boom. After consecutively activating the third level of the battle art, the Qin Wentian now truly seemed like a supreme king. Nobody could shake him. Even the heavenly divine like Qin Wentian felt a stifling pressure from him. As for Yi Qianqian, the hand he used to wield his sword was filled with doubt. He was doubting if the sword in his hand would be able to contend against the king's sword in Qin Wentian's hand. Only when they truly faced Qin Wentian would they be able to clearly sense how strong Qin Wentian was. When Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian saw Qin Wentian's trump cards being unleashed unceasingly, they didn't seem as confident as before. This person dared to say that the two of them would attack together. Was it really just a moment of impulse? However, given such a situation, they could only fight. Qin Ta blasted out with his palm as the shadow of a heavenly divinity appeared. At this instant, the entire space was enveloped by it. This palm seemed to contain the power to lock down the void, causing one to feel that the existence of this palm was extremely powerful. Ordinary characters on the same level as them wouldn't be able to break free at all, and would be directly killed. Just like how Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian could only sense how strong Qin Wentian was when they were facing him, it was the same for them as well. Only when Qin Wentian was facing them would he be able to sense the profoundness and profundity contained within each of their attacks. Qin Wentian's left hand blasted out without hesitation. He didn't evade and chose to attack head-on. His palm circulated with a dazzling runic light. This palm strike seemed to contain the pinnacle of strength, capable of annihilating everything. Almost at the same time, Yi Qianqian's silhouette flickered. His movements were graceful and elegant, as fast as lightning. He directly slashed out with his sword, causing a thunderous sword light to shoot up from below. A beam of destructive light appeared, capable of directly cleaving people into two. Qin Wentian directly lifted his hand and slashed out. Although his sword seemed slow, at the instant he slashed out, sword light erupted forth, slashing apart the void and actually collided perfectly with Yi Qianqian's sword. Palms collided, sword/sword. Rumbling sounds rang out as the battle directly erupted. Rumble. Qin Ta directly stomped on the platform, moving towards Qin Wentian. Yi Qianqian's silhouette closed in, wanting to get close to Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian's wings abruptly flashed as a golden light flashed. He transformed into a wind rock and directly vanished from sight. Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian inclined their heads at the same time. After that, they only saw Qin Wentian transforming into a bolt of golden lightning, akin to a great sage wind rock, moving like the wind. His palms slashed out in rage, directly pressing towards Qin Ta while the sword in his right hand slashed out consecutively, blasting towards Yi Qianqian. Just like how he used his spear arts to deal with ruthless spear arts, he used his strength to deal with Qin Ta's strength, and used his sword to deal with Yi Qianqian's sword. This was no longer a simple battle. He was letting everyone witness his strength, using his strongest stance to appear on the battlefield, silencing those people who doubted his performance in the first two rounds. Boom. At the instant Qin Ta and Qin Wentian collided, this time, it was a direct clash of palms. Qin Ta was an expert from the heavenly god race, and knew that his strength was unparalleled. But when his palms collided with Qin Wentian's, he could clearly feel a terrifying pressure. Qin Wentian's palms seemed indestructible, containing boundless might within them. With just a single strike, Qin Wentian's silhouette vanished once more. Qin Ta didn't even have the time to send out his other palm imprint. Qin Wentian floated in the air as a violet gold light cascaded down from him. Numerous golden figures appeared in the air, resembling divinities. "I've said it before, you guys aren't my match." Qin Wentian faintly spoke. After that, his silhouette flickered as he directly soared up into the sky, transforming into an incomparably resplendent beam of golden light. In an instant, it was unknown how high he had reached. Rumble. An instant later, the sound of thunder thundered through the air, so deafening that it felt as though the entire sky was trembling. At this moment, the experts inclined their heads and stared at the sky. The rumbling sounds grew louder and louder, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Over there, there seemed to be an incomparably resplendent beam of golden light. Rumble. An even more terrifying sound could be heard. The eyes of the crowd froze. They saw an incomparably gigantic silhouette. It was incomparably magnificent and gigantic. It was hundreds of meters tall, and it swooped down at a terrifying speed like a golden bolt of lightning. Not only was it fast, the strength it exuded caused everyone to feel as though it was the end of the world. Qin Ta's body was like a heavenly deity, but at this moment, his eardrums were trembling unceasingly. Staring at that incomparably gigantic silhouette that was getting closer and closer, his heart was pounding. Would he be able to withstand this attack? Yi Qianqian's heart was pounding as well. At this moment, they saw many illusory figures appearing in the air. It was as though there were hundreds of Qin Wentian appearing, blotting out the entire sky. These were all Qin Wentian's illusory figures, and at this moment, it felt as though even the heavens and earth were about to be destroyed. Ark. Qin Ta let out a howl of agony. It felt like his will was about to collapse. Even during the test of his will earlier, he didn't feel so much despair. He had already lost 2 rounds, he couldn't afford to lose again. For this battle, Qin Wentian was challenging the 2 of them, he had to win no matter what. However, when he saw the supreme attack that was about to descend from the sky, how could he win? How could he win? Facing such an attack, would he be able to preserve his life? I concede. Qin Ta roared. Despite how powerful he was, he actually took the initiative to concede, not daring to continue fighting. This roar seemed to have shattered Yi Qianqian's conviction. When he saw that overwhelming attack about to land on him, he also roared, I concede. As the sound of Yi Qianqian's voice faded, the numerous illusory figures transformed into one. From afar, a rumbling sound rang out. That was Qin Wentian unleashing his attack. Busy. The raging wind howled. Qin Wentian's body actually halted abruptly, floating in the air. He transformed back to his 100-meter-tall form, with a pair of terrifying wings. That incomparably tyrannical attack was forcibly halted by him. He cast a glance at Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian below. The purpose of this battle has already been achieved. Before this, he defeated Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King. In this battle he defeated both Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian. In this case, there were already 3 people who were defeated by him. Before him, only Gusi Tianqi, Hua Taishu, Feather King and Mo Wen remained. How powerful! This final battle seems to have become the world of the 3 of them. They are in a hurry to prove themselves, wanting to wash away the humiliation of being ranked lower than them. The hearts of the spectators trembled when they saw Qin Wentian forcing 2 of the top 10 geniuses to concede. How terrifying was this? Right now, there weren't many who could stop Qin Wentian. Maybe, Gusu Tianqi would really have to act. Also, there was Hua Taishu whose performance was on par with Gusu Tianqi earlier. From the start of the final battle until now, he had yet to make a move. He should also be extremely powerful, right? No one knew if he would be able to stop Qin Wentian's footsteps. Qin Wentian then turned his gaze onto the battle between Jun Mengchen and Feather King, as well as the battle between Zi Qingxian and Ruthless. The battle had already reached the climax. Feather King had already used all of his trump cards, while Jun Mengchen was incomparably magnificent, causing even Qin Wentian to feel fear in his heart. Right now, Jun Mengchen floated in the air as a piece of clear sky appeared behind him. Or perhaps, it could be said that it was a world of its own. That was a diagram of the clear sky world, and everything within it could actually move. It was as though the energy within the diagram was something that Jun Mengchen could control. Boom! A stifling pressure abruptly engulfed the heavens and earth. Numerous immortal kings stood up from their seats as they stared in shock at the transformation that was happening to Jun Mengchen. Heavens, this is... Even the undying immortal king who had lived for countless years couldn't help but exclaim in shock as he stared at Jun Mengchen. Undying immortal king. Many turned their gazes onto the undying immortal king, as looks of bewilderment appeared on their faces. Their eyes gleamed with sharpness as a look of inquiry could be seen on their faces. There's no mistake, it must be him. Such a character actually came to participate in this immortal banquet. The eyes of the undying immortal king gleamed with sharpness. Dong Xingting's eyes also gleamed with sharpness. In fact, beside him, Princess Lioli also stood up as her beautiful eyes gleamed with sharpness. Her father, the person the White Emperor was searching for, was this man? Right now his attacks are still very simple. I'm afraid he still doesn't know what potential he has. Congratulations to your majesty, this time around, you are truly going to accept a good disciple. The undying immortal king was filled with envy. This time around, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor had truly picked up a precious disciple. How laughable, Dongxing Ting was still making things difficult for him earlier. Chapter 880. Qin Wentian was somewhat bewildered. The phenomenon that appeared on Jun Mingchen's body actually startled all the immortal kings here. Many of them stood up. Clearly, the phenomenon displayed by Jun Mingchen had shocked them. Seems like junior brother Jun is also extraordinary. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. Most of the people here were immortal kings. To these ancient immortal kings, although they were geniuses with extraordinary talent, there was only a possibility that they could step into the immortal king realm one day. Immortal kings were supreme existences. Celestial phenomenon ascendants were simply too weak. No matter how outstanding one's talent was, it wasn't enough to cause the immortal kings to be too shocked. Hence, from the start till the end, these immortal kings all maintained a calm attitude, watching the selection battle unfold. Very few of them were startled. In addition, the Deep Flame Immortal King was a lofty existence. Although his three fellow apprentices all had outstanding talent, the Deep Flame Immortal King still acted in a domineering manner. Because, although their talent was outstanding, there was only a possibility that they could step into the Immortal King realm. But at this instant, all the Immortal Kings actually stood up in unison because of how extraordinary Jun Mingchen was. What did this mean? Did this mean that Jun Mingchen's future achievements had a very high possibility of surpassing the Immortal King realm? After the Immortal Kings recovered from their shock, they returned to their seats. After all, they were supreme existences. It was fine for them to lose their composure occasionally, but they could instantly regain their composure. Although they were seated, their eyes still gleamed with sharpness as they stared at the battle in the air. Dongxing Ting was also staring at Jun Mingchen, ignoring the battle between Jun Mingchen and Feather King. It was like that wasn't so important anymore. He also didn't expect that he would see such a legendary phenomenon from Jun Mingchen today. In this case, all the things he did to Jun Mingchen earlier had instead smashed his own foot with a rock. Since such a character had appeared, his father would definitely accept him as a personal disciple. Jun Mingchen had to enter the top 3 no matter what. Just now he actually used some underhanded means to stop Jun Mingchen from advancing to the top 3. That was truly laughable. Forget it. Since that's the case, this fellow is worth cultivating. After father takes him in as a personal disciple, I'll ask him to cut off all ties with Qin Wentian. I believe he'll know what to do then. Dongxing Ting silently speculated in his heart. In front of absolute temptation, let alone ordinary fellow apprentices, even master and disciple might fall out with each other. If his father was willing to nurture Jun Mingchen with all his might, so what if he wanted to sever his relationship with Qin Wentian? Didn't they attend the immortal banquet in search of an opportunity? Now he was willing to give this opportunity to Jun Mingchen. At this time, the outcome of the battle was finally decided. After Jun Mingchen revealed his powerful trump card, even the tyrannical Feather King was unable to withstand his attack. Feather King was defeated. Feather King's wings flapped as he floated in the air. Traces of blood could be seen on his body as his aura fluctuated wildly. He inclined his head and stared at the incomparably dazzling Jun Mingchen with a trace of reluctance in his heart. However, Jun Mingchen's attack power was simply too terrifying. He had no way to defend against it. On the platform of the final battle, he was defeated for the first time. Not only that, in the previous 2 rounds he didn't even manage to enter the top 2. One was ranked number 3, and the other was ranked number 4. In this case, it was already extremely dangerous for him to obtain the top 3 rankings. For the following battles, he could only win all of them before he could enter the top 3. Even if he lost one more battle, it would still be an opportunity. In this case, junior apprentice brother Jun only needs to fight 2 more battles. They are against Hua Taishu and Gusi Tianqi. Qin Wentian silently mused. Just at this moment, Jun Mingchen's gaze turned in his direction. Jun Mingchen, who was clad in king armor, exuded an unexcelled aura. When he stared at Qin Wentian, a smile could be seen in his eyes as he called out, "Senior brother. Let's take a break. There are only a few battles left for us to fight." Qin Wentian spoke. Jun Mingchen nodded his head as he retracted his aura. However, the atmosphere in the banquet wasn't very calm. It seemed that because of Jun Mingchen, a huge storm had erupted. "Your Highness, this young man's strength is sufficient to enter the top 3. His earlier performances might be inferior, but since this is a selection battle, it's only a matter of time. Given the halo around him, there's no way he would be able to enter the top 3. Beside Dong Xingting, a supreme immortal king from the Dong Shengshan Gate spoke. Although his words were vague, he was hinting to Dong Xingting that this Jun Mingchen had to enter the top 3 no matter what. If not, even if the Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't accept him as a disciple, he wouldn't have joined the Dong Shengshan Gate. Many of the supreme immortal kings here would send voice transmissions to recruit him. Naturally, the one he feared the most was none other than Princess Liuli. Princess Liuli came to participate in the immortal banquet organized by the Dong Shengshan Gate. Nobody knew what her purpose was, but since Jun Mingchen displayed the legendary phenomenon, how could Princess Liuli, as the daughter of the White Emperor, not know? If Jun Mingchen didn't enter the top 3, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wouldn't directly accept him as a disciple. In fact, Princess Liuli might even interfere and recruit this supreme genius for the sake of her father, the White Emperor, or more accurately, for the sake of the Chongqing the Great. His talent is truly not bad. Let's see how he performs next. We can indeed consider him as one of the top 3 rankers. Dong Xingting nodded. Everyone instantly understood that Dong Xingting intended for Jun Mingchen to enter the top 3. "Your Highness." At this moment, Princess Liuli turned her gaze over as a faint smile flickered in her eyes. Although it was a smile, there was a hint of mysteriousness in it. Before this, Jun Mingchen's performance in the first 2 rounds of the Immortal Banquet was the 6th and the 7th. Such a performance doesn't seem to be anything special. If he performs well in the last round, would he still be able to enter the top 3? Princess Liuli asked. Princess's words are indeed what I'm considering. The purpose of this immortal banquet is to select the 3 most outstanding geniuses for my father to accept as his personal disciples. Although this young man wasn't outstanding enough in the first 2 rounds, as long as his performance in the last round is dazzling enough, why wouldn't he be able to enter the top 3? Dong Xingting's voice resonated through the air as he spoke. In that case, the performance of this young man's senior brother, Qin Wentian, isn't in any way inferior to Jun Mingchen. If Jun Mingchen enters the top 3, would Qin Wentian be considered as well? Princess Liuli turned her gaze over to Gu Zhantian, as a meaningful smile appeared on her face. If Dong Xingting only chose Jun Mingchen and not Qin Wentian, wouldn't that be unfair? Hence, we still need to see how they perform next. If Qin Wentian's performance is outstanding, he can also enter the top 3. Dong Xingting spoke. Princess Liuli didn't say anything more. Gusi Tianqi, Hua Taishu, Jun Mingchen and Qin Wentian. In addition to the powerful Feather King, there were only 3 spots for the top 3 rankers. She really wanted to see how Dong Xingting would choose. On the battle platform, the battles continued unceasingly. Zi Qingxian defeated Ruthless, causing the expression of the undefeatable Devil King to turn incredibly unsightly. After the start of the final battle, his disciple Ruthless was defeated consecutively, not even winning a single battle. As the master of the undefeatable Devil King, he couldn't hold any face at all. However, this also proved how strong these geniuses were. Even for the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, Ruthless, he didn't have much of an advantage and was defeated by numerous people. The competition was simply too intense. On the battle platform, Mo1 and Yi Qianchen also started fighting. From the looks of it, Yi Qianchen might be defeated again. He, the number 1 genius of the Qian prefecture, was now in existence that could be trampled on by others. In fact, Gusi Tianqi also started searching for a battle platform. He defeated Ruthless and walked towards Qin Ta, Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu. What they did, he would do the same. To Gusu Tianqi, being number one was his only goal. One could very well imagine the pressure Qin Ta felt when facing Gusu Tianqi. He was the same as Yi Qianchen, in a very tragic situation. Up till now, he didn't even win a single battle. Seems like for this final battle, Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen are destined to be ranked at the bottom. Their overall ranking wouldn't be able to enter the top 5. The spectators mused silently. This was already destined. In addition, it was already destined that many people wouldn't be able to become one of the top 3 rankers. Other than the 3 of them, Mo1 also had no hope. Even for someone as powerful as Feather King, his chances were extremely slim. Right now, Feather King was staring in the direction of Qin Wentian. His eyes flickered with an intense battle intent, as though he wanted to fight against Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian also saw him. However, Qin Wentian's countenance was indifferent, without a trace of emotion. It was as though Feather King wasn't an opponent he wanted to fight against. Feather King also noticed Qin Wentian's gaze. He walked towards Qin Wentian step by step, his countenance incomparably lofty. His violet gold wings flickered, exuding a terrifying might. Step aside. Qin Wentian glanced at Feather King as he emotionlessly spoke. Feather King's wings flickered as he rushed out like a raging wind. In an instant he appeared before Qin Wentian. He lifted his palms and blasted out, akin to a terrifying sharp claw that tore apart space. Qin Wentian coldly snorted. He lifted his right hand and launched an attack, causing the ancient bell chimes to reverberate unceasingly. At this instant, numerous ancient bells blasted out unceasingly, causing rumbling sounds to shake the heavens and earth. Feather King roared in rage, wanting to crush Qin Wentian with a single strike. The ancient bell chimes rang out unceasingly. Beams of calamity light slammed into Feather King, causing his soul to tremble. Qin Wentian's entire body was enveloped by an intense battle halo. When Feather King stared at Qin Wentian, all he saw was a dazzling battle halo. Bang! Finally, Feather King could no longer withstand the unceasing attacks of the ancient bells. With a flap of his wings, he retreated while Qin Wentian stood at his original location, coldly staring at him. Qingxian, do your best to win this battle. Qin Wentian spoke. Qingxian walked over and stood opposite of Feather King. A pair of divine falcon wings appeared on her back as well, gleaming with a dazzling light. Feather King's eyes narrowed. Qin Wentian wanted Qingxian to fight against him. As for Qin Wentian himself, it seemed that he couldn't be bothered to fight against him. After Qin Wentian swept through a few people, he felt that there was no longer a need to use Feather King to establish his might. Right now, his gaze was no longer on Feather King. Boom! Feather King's aura towered up into the sky. After being defeated by Junmingchen, Qin Wentian actually refused to fight against him. How much contempt was this? Chapter 881. Feather King and Qingxian both had a pair of wings on their backs. Their violet gold wings shone resplendently, incomparably resplendent. The two of them instantly clashed against each other. And in just an instant, violet gold light filled the air, clashing countless times. Their attacks are both so fast. Not only that, they are also extremely powerful. The hearts of the spectators trembled. Every time the two of them attacked, the air would tremble, and a storm would sweep out. In just a short while, a terrifying tornado had actually gathered around them. This cylindrical violet gold tornado swept through the air and rose up. The two of them also rose up along with the tornado, continuing to fight towards the sky. Even the gazes of the spectators were directed upwards, watching the shocking battle. If Feather King can't win this battle, he would have no chance at all. Before him, there's still Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu. And now there's even a Junmingchen. Qin Wentian didn't even bother to fight against him. From this, one could very well imagine the pressure Feather King is under. An immortal king spoke in a low voice. The top 10 geniuses were simply too terrifying. Leaving aside the dazzling Gusu Tianqi, as well as the low-profile Hua Taishu, Junmingchen and Qin Wentian, which one of them would be weak? Qin Ta from the heavenly god race who was as tyrannical as a heavenly deity, as well as Yi Qianchen with his supreme sword arts, Both of them actually became existences at the bottom of the top 10. There was also the young king of the Sky Devil race, Feather King. First, he was defeated by Jun Mingchen. Gusu Tianqi and Qin Wentian didn't even treat him as an opponent. This was simply too crazy. Those immortal kings also sighed in admiration. Being able to see so many outstanding juniors fighting against each other was an extremely interesting thing. It was like seeing themselves back then. Very swiftly, Gusu Tianqi defeated Qin Ta. Emowen defeated Yi Qianchen. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen were destined to be ranked at the bottom, not having a single victory. It wasn't that they weren't strong, but rather, their opponents were simply too terrifying. The battles continued. Other than Hua Taishu, who hadn't participated yet, the others were all fighting with all their might. Myriad Incarnations Immortal King, this disciple of yours doesn't seem to be interested in fame. The undying old Immortal King spoke to the beautiful Immortal King. Hua Taishu hadn't even fought a single battle. Even if he entered the top 3, I'm still reluctant to see him enter the tutelage of His Majesty. In addition, since he walked out from the world of reincarnation, his temperament is naturally different from others. Hence, what he wants is different from others. The Myriad Incarnations Immortal King laughed. The undying Immortal King nodded his head. This was indeed the case. Everyone who stepped onto the battle platform had their own goals. Gusu Tianqi's name shook the entire Eastern Prefecture. He wanted to prove himself with a single battle, becoming the top ranker of the Eastern Prefecture, continuing the glory of his ancestors. As for the other geniuses, there were those who wanted to become disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, and there were also geniuses who wanted to attract the attention of the supreme existences of the Dongshengshan Gate. All of them had their own goals. Only Hua Taishu was different. No one knew what he was thinking. The tempest of battle continued. Feather King and Ziqingxuan's battle grew more and more terrifying. Their battle in the air could be said to be world-shaking. Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen were both spectating. Hua Taishu and Gusu Tianqi were also spectating. The four of them seemed to have nothing to do. Hua Taishu's gaze slowly turned over, landing on Qin Wentian. His countenance was as calm as ever, as though nothing could affect him. It seems like there's really a predestined relationship between us. Hua Taishu smiled at Qin Wentian. His smile was extremely natural, exuding a carefree aura. There wasn't the slightest bit of hatred in it. Qin Wentian stared at Hua Taishu. He also smiled and nodded his head. When I was 16, I met you. At that time, you were already the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. After that, I also obtained the same fame as you. After that, we met again in the immortal martial realm. Maybe it's like what you said. It's just that our predestined relationship is lacking a battle. That's exactly what I was thinking. Hua Taishu smiled at Qin Wentian. On the battle platform, the only thing I wanted to do was to fight against you. Now, are you prepared? MHM. Qin Wentian nodded. The two of them stood facing each other. At this instant, it was as though only the two of them were left on the battle platform. This was a battle that belonged to them. A battle that should have happened a long time ago. It's just that the battle had been delayed until today. The various immortal kings stared at the two of them, as bewildered expressions appeared on their faces. From the conversation between Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian, it seemed like they were already acquainted with each other. At that time, Qin Wentian was only 16 years old. How interesting. However, the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King and the Undying Immortal King weren't surprised. They knew that Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu came from the same particle world. Given their talent, it was only natural for them to have interacted with each other in their particle world. Hua Taishu is about to battle against Qin Wentian. This battle is extremely important. Hua Taishu's earlier performance, being first in the first round and second in the second round. His probability of entering the top 3 was the same as Gusu Tianqi. If he defeated Qin Wentian, there was no doubt that he would be one of the top 3. After all, Qin Wentian had already defeated several people. But what if Qin Wentian defeated Hua Taishu? Would Dongxing Ting allow a supreme genius who was ranked last in the first round to enter the top 3? This battle caused everyone to be filled with anticipation. Jun Mingchen and Gusu Tianqi both stood there. staring at Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu. The two of them were also filled with anticipation, wondering who would be the victor. Jun Mingchen naturally believed in Qin Wentian. Although they were tricked in the first 2 rounds, causing their rankings to be bad, for this final battle, they definitely had to shock everyone, trampling on the geniuses. Who would dare to doubt them? Even if the top 3 rankings weren't given to them, they would have no regrets. They had already done their best and didn't let down the expectations of the Heavenly Talisman realm. Even if they didn't pass the test, that was their fate. The spectators only saw Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian standing there, incomparably calm. In fact, they didn't even move at all. The only strange thing was that in the center of Qin Wentian's brows, a dazzling beam of light could be seen shooting out from it. In the airspace above him, a dreamlike scene appeared, the Dream World constellation. The two of them who didn't seem to have exchanged blows had already started their battle. The two of them entered an illusory space. This was Qin Wentian's Dream World constellation, which was also Hua Taishu's illusory space. Hua Taishu's eyes were capable of combat. This point had already been proven before, no one would doubt it. His master was the myriad incarnations immortal king who was proficient in illusions. Hua Taishu himself had also entered the world of reincarnation, and exited it safely. He didn't die nor did he go insane. The two of them were now in an independent space. Here, there was the Dream World constellation. Yet there were many Hua Taishu's silhouettes flickering unceasingly. An illusory space? In the earlier battle, Hua Taishu also used the same method, causing his opponent to have no way to retaliate. Qin Wentian silently mused. In this illusory space, any Hua Taishu's silhouettes could be nothing but illusions. Numerous Hua Taishu's silhouettes walked towards Qin Wentian. All of them wielded long spears in their hands, and one of them directly stabbed out with his spear, aiming for Qin Wentian. This spear strike contained a terrifying might within. Qin Wentian waved his hands as a fearsome light circulated within his palms, directly shattering the spear. That silhouette directly disintegrated, as though it was nothing but an illusion. Bzz! Yet another attack blasted over. Qin Wentian responded with yet another palm strike. This time it was still an illusion. The spectators in the outside world only saw Qin Wentian attacking unceasingly under the effects of the constellation, causing them to feel fear in their hearts. Hua Taishu's illusory arts were simply too powerful. Qin Wentian had clearly already fallen into a trap. However, at this moment, the spectators saw boundless sword might radiating from Qin Wentian. That was a terrifying storm of sword chi as the sword slaughter constellation was unleashed. Within the illusory space, the sword slashed out, tearing apart numerous Hua Taishu's silhouettes. However, new illusions appeared unceasingly, as though there would be no end to this. In front of him, yet another spear strike shot over. This spear strike contained a terrifying might within. Qin Wentian stared at the incoming long spear as countless illusions appeared in his mind. In front of him, there was no one attacking him. Now, it was as though he was back in the Sky Harmony city of Chu. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, and Mo Qingqing was clad in a pure white robe, resembling a celestial maiden as she stared back at him amidst the drifting snow. In just an instant, numerous scenes appeared in his mind, as though he was experiencing it in reality. Not good. Qin Wentian's sense of vigilance was extremely strong. His aura abruptly erupted forth as he unleashed his battle art. His bloodline power surged as he roared in rage. Momentarily, the chimes of ancient bells rang out as he blasted out with both his palms. Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as a long spear gleaming with destructive light flashed past. Qin Wentian saw the calm expression in Hua Taishu's eyes. That's his true body. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. His true body was fused with the millions of illusions, and his spear strike contained a powerful illusory art that could directly affect the will of his opponent. In an instant, it would cause other scenes to appear in his opponent's mind. At this moment, the true killing intent of Hua Taishu bore down on him. How terrifying was this killing move? In the illusory space, millions of illusory figures flickered. It was impossible to tell which one was real and which was fake. Hua Taishu's ability was different from the others, but the danger he posed was extremely high. If it wasn't for his firm will earlier, he would have already been defeated. If it was someone else, Hua Taishu could kill his opponent with a single strike if he wanted to. Everything is an illusion. It's impossible to break it with one's will alone. An immortal king sighed in admiration. Hua Taishu's illusory arts were extremely powerful. Among the 10 geniuses, which of them could break it? Qin Wentian could also sense that this type of illusory technique wasn't something that could be broken through by someone with a powerful will. His body glowed with a faint white light, and an instant later, a pure white holy flame ignited around him. Runic inscriptions flowed around his body, and this flame congregated in the third eye in the center of his brows. At this instant, even his eyes turned white. White flames could be seen burning in his eyes, extremely terrifying to the extreme. Bzz. Those illusory figures directly ignited, burning under the fearsome gaze of his eyes. From an illusory figure, they turned into an illusory figure. Chapter 882. Hua Taishu's abilities were unique. If one wanted to defeat him, they couldn't simply rely on their attacks. First, they had to break through the illusions. Only by breaking through Hua Taishu's illusions would they have a chance to defeat him. If not, they wouldn't even know where Hua Taishu was. How could they even fight? Qin Wentian's eyes were infused with the power of a second bloodline. Both his eyes shone with white runic light. Numerous Hua Taishu's silhouettes were directly engulfed in flames, turning illusory. One after another, Hua Taishu's silhouette shot towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian inclined his head only to see that the silhouettes were all engulfed in flames, unable to advance any further. In the surrounding space, more and more Hua Taishu's silhouettes appeared, but all of them were engulfed in flames, transforming into beams of illusory light. Hua Taishu's true body appeared before Qin Wentian, so clear and distinct. However, at this moment, Hua Taishu's eyes were also changing. His eyes seemed to be able to revolve, resembling an incomparably deep vortex that could swallow people within. In fact, runic light could even be seen flickering in his eyes. Instantly, an even stronger illusion appeared. Qin Wentian couldn't shift his gaze away even if he wanted to. That pair of eyes was deeply imprinted into his mind. In his mind, many illusions appeared. Not only in his mind, there were even many silhouettes appearing before his eyes. There was the silhouette of Qing Heir, and Mo Qingcheng, Uncle Black. It was as though everything he had experienced in the past flashed before his eyes, causing Qin Wentian to sink into the illusions once more. These two, those immortal kings, were all stunned. That pair of terrifying eyes seemed to be a battle of eye techniques. Myriad incarnations. What about your disciple Hua Taishu's eyes? The undying immortal king stared at the beautiful immortal king as he asked. He cultivated this out himself. I merely played a supporting role. This was something he experienced in the samsara world. Experiencing 9 lives of samsara before he had a fortuitous encounter. This pair of eyes can cause people to sink into samsara. No matter how many things you have experienced in the past, it can allow you to recall them, and even create other reincarnation illusions. For those with weak wills, they wouldn't even be able to withstand a single strike from this pair of eyes. The myriad incarnations immortal king spoke with a hint of arrogance. Hua Taishu's achievements weren't simply because she was his master. A master was only there to guide him. The most important thing for cultivation was to depend on oneself. Hua Taishu's eyes were something that even she, an immortal king, had no way to achieve. The world of reincarnation is known as the Forbidden Land. As expected, the opportunities here are great. You really dare to let him enter? The undying immortal king sighed. There were some forbidden grounds in the immortal realms that were extremely terrifying. Very few people dared to enter because they would die the moment they entered. The world of reincarnation was one of the most terrifying forbidden grounds. It was a miniature particle world. That's his own courage. If he didn't enter the world of samsara, how would he be able to obtain this pair of samsara eyes? The myriad incarnations immortal king smiled at her disciple. However, this Qin Wentian isn't simple as well. Look at his eyes, they are extremely terrifying as well. The undying immortal king laughed. Everyone only saw Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu staring at each other. Qin Wentian's entire body shone with a white light as he unleashed a terrifying battle art. Hua Taishu was proficient in illusionary techniques. In that case, his attacks would naturally be weaker in terms of strength. This was Hua Taishu's weakness. Only by breaking apart Hua Taishu's illusions and suppressing them with force would he be able to defeat his opponent. Qin Wentian stepped out. It was like all the illusions in the surroundings were seen through by him, not entering his eyes at all. When Hua Taishu saw this scene, the light in his eyes grew even more terrifying. His pupils spun rapidly, causing the entire space around him to twist and distort, forcibly pulling Qin Wentian into another illusory space. Over here, there were countless familiar figures of Qin Wentian floating before Qin Wentian's eyes. Calm your heart. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. A terrifying aura abruptly gushed forth as he dashed towards Hua Taishu. At this moment, a silhouette appeared in front of him. That silhouette was none other than Mo Qingcheng. It was so realistic, it was as though the real Mo Qingcheng had appeared right in front of him. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows, his aura fluctuated slightly. This was Mo Qingcheng, how should he act against her? In the next instant, he saw a pair of eyes that could cause people to sink into samsara. This pair of eyes directly penetrated through his white eyes. Instantly, numerous scenes appeared in his mind. He saw a towering immortal palace, he saw his parents. Over there, experts were as common as the clouds, as though something major had happened. Numerous powerful existences that resembled fiend gods radiated their might, engulfing the heavens and earth. Everything was so clear, it was like a samsara that belonged to him. Careful! In the outside world, Jun Mengchen exclaimed in shock. Hua Taishu's long spear was already nearing Qin Wentian's throat. This spear strike was too fast, so fast that even Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian were on tenterhooks. A violent demonic roar rang out as a terrifying demonic qi erupted forth, protecting Qin Wentian's body, directly blocking the long spear. And at the same instant, Qin Wentian opened his eyes. Hua Taishu retreated backwards. However, Qin Wentian's aim was precisely this strike. How could he allow his opponent to retreat? Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out as numerous golden silhouettes descended from the sky, suppressing everything, sealing off Hua Taishu's path of retreat. Both his palms blasted out explosively as runic light filled the sky, capable of plucking the stars and seizing the moon, as well as containing a scorching heat that seemed capable of destroying everything. Upon seeing this scene, Hua Taishu's silhouette shuddered. In an instant, numerous silhouettes manifested, both real and illusory, as though they were real existences. These silhouettes flickered in the air, with resplendent runic light shimmering on their backs. They lifted their palms to attack, stacking their attacks on top of each other, transforming into a single attack that collided with Qin Wentian's terrifying palm imprints, resulting in a direct explosion. At the same time, Qin Wentian felt numerous samsara eyes staring at him, wanting to penetrate through his eyes. Instantly, countless scenes flashed through his mind. There were things that happened in reality, as well as illusions that didn't exist. Boom! Qin Wentian ignited both his bloodlines. Pure white runic light radiated from his body, akin to divine flames. His eyes grew even more terrifying. With just a single glance, he was able to see through all the silhouettes of Hua Taishu, locating the location of Hua Taishu's true body. The numerous silhouettes of Hua Taishu all lifted their spears and stabbed towards Qin Wentian. Each spear strike seemed to bore into Qin Wentian's eyes. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see countless scenes flashing through Qin Wentian's eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wentian's bloodline was so terrifying, there was no way for him to fight against Hua Taishu. At this moment, a terrifying light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. He inclined his head and roared in rage, "Come down!" As the sound of his voice faded, the suppression annihilation astral soul in the air unceasingly manifested numerous golden silhouettes that descended from the skies. Accompanied by thunderous rumbling sounds, these golden silhouettes stood in different directions, faintly forming into an extremely powerful diagram. One of Hua Taishu's golden silhouettes felt a stifling pressure at this instant. That diagram's glow, other than containing a suppressive might, was also exuding an incomparably mysterious energy that sealed this entire space. Boom! Tens of thousands of silhouettes appeared at the same time. Qin Wentian ignored all the attacks. With a roar of rage, the tens of thousands of silhouettes all blasted out a terrifying punch in a single direction. Terrifying white runic flames flowed through the air. Everywhere they passed by, everything was reduced to ashes. Hua Taishu's original body was currently trapped within the terrifying suppression diagram, and for a period of time, he had no way to extricate himself. Boom boom boom. Numerous terrifying attacks exploded in front of Hua Taishu. Hua Taishu finally managed to extricate himself from the suppression diagram as he retreated abruptly, floating in the air. His eyes gradually returned to normal, turning calm as he stared at Qin Wentian. Seems like the number one of Grand Xia is still you. After experiencing 9 reincarnations, he was defeated once again when he faced off against Qin Wentian today. His strength lay in his illusions. Very few people on the same level as him could break through his illusions. Even experts with a higher cultivation base wouldn't be able to do so. However, Qin Wentian actually had the ability to break through his illusions. And in terms of attacks, he was clearly at a disadvantage. His attacks weren't as strong as Qin Wentian's. He was very clear about this point. Defeated. When the spectators heard Hua Taishu's words, they couldn't help but feel a sense of melancholy in their hearts. This was too fascinating, 2 geniuses contending against each other on the battle platform. But ultimately, Hua Taishu was defeated. As for the number one of Grand Xia in his words, the spectators didn't understand. But Qin Wentian understood. Their hometown was Grand Xia, and both of them originated from Grand Xia. Most probably, this was Hua Taishu's obsession. The two of them, from Grand Xia all the way to the vast immortal realms, Qin Wentian was still able to suppress Hua Taishu in every aspect. Why is there a need to determine who's number one and who's number two? Wouldn't it be better if more demon-level geniuses of Grand Xia emerged? Qin Wentian spoke. Right. Hua Taishu smiled and nodded. As for those at the immortal banquet, the countenances of the spectators were all extremely fascinating. The myriad incarnations immortal king froze for a moment before she stared at Qin Wentian and smiled. What a demon-level genius! Both of them are talents with great potential. This disciple of yours has already reached the peak of perfection in his illusions. In the future, his accomplishments in illusions might even surpass you. If he can make up for his other aspects, it's hard to imagine what kind of character he would be able to create. The undying immortal king stroked his beard as he laughed. Even he wanted to train Qin Wentian. Not bad. At this moment, Dong Xingting also spoke. His gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian on the battle platform, as he felt a complicated feeling in his heart. Qin Wentian actually defeated Qin Wentian. In that case, which ranking should he place Qin Wentian in? At this moment, Qin Wentian also turned his gaze over. Dong Xingting smiled and continued. Back then, you have already displayed outstanding talent. My royal father initially wanted to accept you as a disciple, but sadly, you rejected my royal father's suggestion of 1,000 years of tempering. But since you are able to make a comeback, it's not bad at all. However, let me ask you, if the things back then could happen again, would you agree to my royal father's suggestion of 1,000 years of tempering? When Dong Xingting spoke this sentence, his eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared at Qin Wentian. This caused the hearts of many to tremble. This sentence had a deep meaning behind it. One could even say that Dong Xingting was giving Qin Wentian a chance to become one of the top 3 rankers. Qin Wentian stared at Dong Xingting with a calm countenance, after which he slowly spoke. 1,000 years is too long, but my heart is still the same. Chapter 883. My heart is still the same. Qin Wentian's voice was filled with resolution. If this was a rematch, even if he didn't know that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was doing this on purpose, he would still reject it. To immortal kings, 1,000 years might pass by in the blink of an eye. But to him who has only lived for tens of years, 1,000 years was simply too long. Maybe Qin Wentian also understood the meaning behind Dong Xingting's words. Maybe Dong Xingting was probing him, wanting to see if Qin Wentian knew how to compromise, and if he knew how to lower his head. If he lowered his head now, he would do so again in the future. Hence to Dong Xingting, if Qin Wentian was willing to lower his head, he was willing to give Qin Wentian a chance to enter the top 3 and enter the tutelage of his royal father. In the future, he would grind away the wanton and unrestrained aura from him, allowing him to become someone who truly knew how to be loyal. However, Qin Wentian was still the same. Qin Wentian could also try to curry favor with Dong Xingting. However, this would go against his heart. As a cultivator, one's heart had to be firm. Even if he couldn't enter the top 3, he would. This selection process, to him, was the true tempering exercise. Naturally, for the sake of perfection, he would do his best to become one of the top 3. But he wouldn't do it against his heart. The eyes of the immortal kings gleamed with sharpness as they stared at Qin Wentian. This young man defeated Hua Taishu, and although he was ranked last in the first round, he was still one of the top 3 in the second round. In addition to his outstanding performance today, it wouldn't be impossible for him to enter the top 3. Dong Xingting's words seemed to be hinting at him. However, he rejected it with no hesitation because his heart was still the same. His heart would never change. His heart is resolute. He's a good material. Not bad. Dong Xingting smiled. As for what he was thinking in his heart, only Dong Xingting himself would know. Senior Myriad Transformations disciple Hua Taishu is also a dragon among men. How terrifying are those samsara eyes of his. In the future, if he is tempered by an immortal king, he would be able to consign his enemies to eternal damnation with a single glance. If my royal father saw him, he would surely like him. Dong Xingting laughed as he praised. Although you lost this battle, it's also an honor to be defeated. In addition, your performance in the previous 2 rounds, you were ranked 1st and 2nd respectively. Only Gusi Tianqi can be compared to you. The spectators could hear the meaning behind Dong Xingting's words. It seemed that Dong Xingting intended to place Hua Taishu within the top 3. If Hua Taishu was one of the top 3 rankers, Gusi Tianqi should be one of them as well. Who was the other person? The gazes of many turned to Jun Mingchen. Given the talent Jun Mingchen displayed, Dong Xingting would definitely allow him to enter the top 3. In that case, there were no more spots left for the top 3 rankers. At this moment, intense sounds of collision rang out in the airspace above Guzhantian. Before this, the attention of everyone was focused on the battle between Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu. Yet they neglected the battle between Feather King and Ziqingxian. Their battle in the air was extremely violent, clashing head-on with each other, causing even the sky to shatter. At this moment in the air, Feather King seemed to have summoned a supreme ancient devil of the winged devil race, transforming into a true king of the winged devil race. His physique was incomparably terrifying while Ziqingxuan's body seemed to be burning. The golden flame divine falcon protected behind her as boundless golden flames circulated around it. At this moment, Ziqingxian seemed to have transformed into a divine falcon. The ancient devil and divine falcon fought in the air, causing the entire space to tremble. Eventually, the divine falcon defeated the feather devil race, tearing apart its wings. However, the divine falcon was also injured, but ultimately, Ziqingxian seemed to have the upper hand. The 2 of them floated in the air. Both had a pair of gigantic wings on their backs. Their gazes were incomparably sharp as they stared at each other. It was as though a towering battle intent was burning within them. Bzz! A terrifying bolt of lightning shot out as the Feather King howled in rage. Ziqingxian let out a thunderous roar as the golden flame divine falcon radiated with boundless shadow light. In an instant, the light from the Feather King skyrocketed as a gigantic divine falcon manifested, enveloping everything in its path. Countless illusory divine falcons flew out, unceasingly slamming into the body of the Feather King. Finally, just as the Feather King was about to slam into Ziqingxian, the divine falcon's talons slammed down, slamming the Feather King and the Feather Devil through the air. It's over. Ziqingxian actually won against the Feather King. The spectators stared at the air. They didn't expect this battle to be so fascinating. Qin Wentian and his 2 companions actually didn't suffer a single defeat. It was very hard to imagine why the rankings of the 3 of them were so low. For this final battle, it could be said that they were invincible. Among the top 10, other than Gusi Tianqi and Hua Taishu, the other 3 spots belonged to them. Qin Wentian glanced at Jun Mingchen and Zi Qingxian before turning his gaze to Gusi Tianqi. This tempering exercise was nearing its end. Senior brother, next, I will fight against Hua Taixu while you fight against Gusi Tianqi. How about it? At this moment, Jun Mingchen stared at Qin Wentian as his eyes flickered with an intense light of excitement. It was as though a battle could excite him. Jun Mingchen wanted to sweep the entire platform clean. Qin Wentian stared at Jun Mingchen. He didn't doubt the strength and talent of this junior brother of his. However, if Jun Mingchen fought against Hua Taixu, Qin Wentian still didn't feel very optimistic about Jun Mingchen. Jun Mingchen was proficient in offense. His attacks were extremely powerful, and when he unleashed the clear sky worldly diagram, he was like a supreme war king that could slay gods if he met them. However, Hua Taixu was proficient in illusions, and as long as one couldn't break through his illusions, no matter how strong one's attacks were, it would be useless. If Hua Taixu fought against Jun Mingchen, there was no doubt that Jun Mingchen would win for sure. However, this situation was clearly impossible. If Jun Mingchen fought against Hua Taixu would definitely force him into an illusion. Whether or not Jun Mingchen could defeat Hua Taixu would depend on whether he could break through the illusions and dispel that terrifying whirlpool of samsara eyes. There's no need for that. My battle has already ended, and I have no intention to continue. Hua Taixu calmly replied, his words causing Qin Wentian to start, as he stared at Hua Taixu in bewilderment. He stared into Hua Taixu's eyes, only to see a hint of a smile in them. Qin Wentian instantly understood what Hua Taixu was thinking. To him, this was a tempering exercise. Wasn't it the same for Hua Taixu as well? In addition, Hua Taixu was the personal disciple of the myriad incarnations Immortal King. He had no intentions of taking the Eastern Sage Immortal King as his master. The top 3 rankings were meaningless to him. This battle was already sufficient for him. Qin Wentian. Hua Taixu understood his own illusions, and he also knew that he was still lacking. In the future, on his path of cultivation, he would make sure to perfect himself. Hua Taixu actually doesn't wish to continue fighting. The spectators were all bewildered. Since he refused to fight, that meant that there was only one opponent left for Qin Wentian and his fellow apprentices. The number 1 genius of the Eastern continent, Gusi Tianqi. Gusi Tianqi stared at the 3 of them as he slowly spoke. Finally, I shall fight against you guys. After speaking, Gusi Tianqi walked towards the opponents he had never challenged before. His goal was different from Hua Taixu. He wanted to become the most dazzling character in this immortal banquet. All his opponents would be defeated by him. Let's rest. Qin Wentian, Jun Mingchen and Zi Qingxian stood on the ancient battle platform as they watched the other battles. Mo1 defeated Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. Ruthless also did the same. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen were destined to be the last 2. Qin Ta was the victor of their battle. Feather King defeated Mo1 before. His ranking should be number 6. The rankings of the remaining 5 were already determined. Feather King, Mo1 Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. In addition, there wouldn't be too much of a dispute. Even someone as powerful as Feather King could only be ranked number 5. Naturally, this was the best ranking for the final battle. It could also be the final ranking, depending on Dong Shengting's thoughts. In the final ranking, he could also place Feather King in front of Zi Qingxian. But no matter what, this battle was already nearing its end. Gusu Tianqi swept through the other 5 participants. All of them had been defeated by him before. Not a single one was spared. After that, he didn't continue fighting. He sat down cross-legged and started to recuperate. On the ancient battle platform, there was a rare moment of silence. Even the immortal banquet quietened down. Everyone knew that the final battle was about to begin. Qingxian, can you defeat Gusu Tianqi? Qin Wentian transmitted his voiceover. Zi Qingxian had seen Gusu Tianqi's other battles, and should have an idea of how strong he would be. I will lose. Zi Qingxian didn't conceal anything and directly replied. It wasn't easy for her to defeat Feather King, but Gusu Tianqi's victory over Feather King was extremely domineering, erupting forth with a shocking amount of energy. If she fought against Gusu Tianqi, the ending could already be predicted. In that case, do you still want to fight? Qin Wentian asked again. There's no need. Although I have no fate with the top 3, I've already gained a lot from this trip. My tempering exercise shall end here. Why must I seek another defeat? Zi Qingxian straightforwardly replied. She admitted that she was inferior to Gusu Tianqi. It wasn't that she didn't have the courage to fight. It was just that from her point of view, there was no longer a need to. How many of you still want to continue fighting? If we stop here, the rankings can be directly revealed. At this moment, Dong Xingting's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he spoke. If we stop here, who will be the top 3? Jun Mingchen stared at Dong Xingting as he asked. Gusu Tianqi was first in the first round and second in the second. He won all 5 of his battles, and the others didn't dare to issue a challenge. He shall be ranked first. Hua Taishi was first in the first round and second in the second. Although he was defeated once, it doesn't diminish his brilliance. He shall be ranked second. Jun Mingchen has a unique physique. Although his performance in the first 2 rounds was ordinary, he was undefeated in the final battle. He shall be ranked third. Qin Wentian, although he was ranked last in the first round, he defeated Hua Taishu in the final battle and was undefeated. He shall be ranked fourth. Dong Xingting slowly spoke. Jun Mingchen directly interrupted. For the first 2 rounds, senior brother Qin obtained the top 3 in the second round and defeated Hua Taishu in this round. His battle result isn't inferior to mine. Why am I in the top 3 but senior brother Qin isn't? Also, if senior brother Qin and I defeat Gusu Tianqi, what would our rankings be? The selection test of the Immortal Banquet is based on one's overall strength. The talent you displayed is unique, and if you can defeat both Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu, I can even allow you to be ranked first. Even if you are defeated, you shall still be ranked third. As for Qin Wentian, even if he defeated Gusu Tianqi and obtained the first position in this round, his overall ranking shouldn't be higher than Gusu Tianqi or Hua Taishu. Dong Xingting's meaning was extremely clear. He was willing to give Jun Mingchen a spot in the top 3, but he was determined to push Qin Wentian to the 4th position. For the first 2 rounds, he allowed Qin Wentian to obtain the best ranking. And now, it seemed that he was playing a crucial role, preventing Qin Wentian from entering the top 3. Chapter 884. Dong Xingting could also be considered extremely intelligent. Before this, he had already calculated everything. Based on the rankings, even if Qin Wentian was ranked first, he would still be at a disadvantage when compared to Hua Taishu and Gusu Tianqi. However, everyone understood in their hearts that the weight of the final battle was the heaviest. But since Dong Xingting was the host of the Immortal Banquet in place of his father, Dongxing Heaven Emperor, no matter what he said, nobody would dare to refute him. Before this, Dong Xingting's targeting of Qin Wentian was still a little obscure. But now, as Qin Wentian stood out, it was already more obvious. Naturally, everyone also understood that before this, Dong Xingting had given Qin Wentian a chance, but was rejected by Qin Wentian. This seemed to have already determined the ending. Just like what the Deep Flame Immortal King had said, the ending was already set in stone. Your Highness. At this moment, Princess Liuli called out. Dong Xingting turned his gaze over and stared at Princess Liuli as he smiled. Princess, what's the matter? Your Highness once said that if Qin Wentian is outstanding enough, he would definitely be able to enter the top 3. But why are you saying this now? Princess Liuli replied. I'm only a little curious. If it's inconvenient for your Highness to say it, it's fine as well. After all, this is the Immortal Banquet hosted by the Dongshengshan Gate. I shouldn't be too nosy. I'm sure Princess's question is also the same question in the hearts of many. Dong Xingting laughed. For this Immortal Banquet, firstly, it's to see the geniuses of our Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. Secondly, it's to recruit geniuses into the Immortal Sect, and thirdly, it's to recruit disciples for my royal father. Princess might not know this, but Qin Wentian's talent is so outstanding that my royal father wanted to take him in as a disciple, allowing him to follow the Deep Flame Immortal King for 1,000 years. However, he wasn't willing to endure for 1,000 years, feeling that it was too long, and rejected my royal father's suggestion. Hence, my royal father was unhappy and decided to retract his decision. This time, Qin Wentian's comeback was originally a good thing. Before this, I've also asked him if he was willing to undergo 1,000 years of tempering if he was given another chance. However, he rejected once again. Princess has already seen for yourself that his personality is too arrogant, disregarding everything in his eyes. I'm worried that my royal father wouldn't be happy about this. Gusu Tianqi, I believe my royal father would be even more satisfied. In addition, Gusu Tianqi's performance in the Immortal Banquet was already extremely domineering. Although he was defeated in the final battle, he wasn't inferior to Gusu Tianqi by much. Gusu Tianqi is like this, Hua Taishu is the same as well. If Gusu Tianqi enters the top 3 while Hua Taishu doesn't, wouldn't that be too unfair? Dong Xingting spoke frankly with assurance. After which he turned to Qin Wentian. Naturally, there's no harm in doing so. Our Dong Shengshan Gate will still send Supreme Immortal Kings to personally guide Qin Wentian and observe him. If his performance is outstanding, he would still be able to become a sage child of our sect, and even gain the favor of my royal father. This can also be considered a test for him, to see how his temperament is. Dong Xingting explained in such detail was also for the sake of his future plans. He was targeting Qin Wentian, and now that Princess Liuli had already seen through it, he might as well be frank with his intentions to avoid any misunderstandings from Princess Liuli. If news of this were to spread to Qing Er's ears in the future, although it would still be suspicious, at the very least, he could justify his words on the surface. In order to prevent Qin Wentian from entering the top 3, he could only do so. Understood. Princess Liuli nodded her head lightly and didn't say anything more. I have no intentions of entering the top 3. It's not that I'm arrogant, but other than Qin Wentian, for the other participants, only Gusu Tianqi and Jun Mingchen might be able to threaten me. But even so, the probability of victory is 50-50. Earlier, Qin Wentian has already defeated me. If he were to replace me in the top 3, I wouldn't have any objections. At this moment, Hua Taishu stared at Dong Xingting as he spoke, his words causing many to be bewildered. Seems like Hua Taishu wasn't interested in taking the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as his master, but he was extremely respectful towards his master, the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King. And as expected, at this moment, the beautiful eyes of the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King flashed with a consoling smile. The 100-year grand event of the Dong Shengshan Gate, how can it be a child's play? I've already seen the performance of the geniuses present. How can I back down? Dong Xingting faintly spoke, causing Hua Taishu's expression to stiffen. However, he only saw Qin Wentian smiling at him. Hua Taishu, there's no need to say anything more. The Dong Shengshan Gate is the leader of the 13 prefectures. His Highness Dong Xingting naturally has his own plans in mind. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, expressions of interest appeared on the faces of the spectators. Did Qin Wentian give up? Ultimately, his ranking could only be ranked number 4. His 3 fellow apprentice brothers were all so dazzling, radiating resplendent light. However, it seems that only Jun Mingchen would be able to enter the top 3. Qin Wentian could only be ranked number 4, and Zi Qingxian could only be ranked number 5. Senior brother. Jun Mingchen was still somewhat unconvinced. Mingchen. Qin Wentian directly interrupted what Jun Mingchen wanted to say. He then continued, trust in your Highness Dong Xingting. For the next battle, you will challenge Gusu Tianqi. If you win, I believe your ranking would still be able to advance. You have to do your best in this battle. Right. Jun Mingchen nodded heavily. The anger in his body was about to erupt forth. His silhouette flickered as he directly landed in the center of the platform. He stared at Gusu Tianqi as he spoke. I will win this battle for sure. Gusu Tianqi opened his eyes as a terrifying beam of light shot out from them. Terrifying to the extreme. Jun Mingchen would win for sure? In that case, wouldn't he, Gusu Tianqi, be defeated? You won't be able to win. Gusu Tianqi stepped out as a terrifying heat wave instantly gushed forth from him. 9 blazing suns floated in the air as an incomparably gigantic furnace appeared. Numerous long spears could be seen within the furnace, each of them resembling a blazing sun spear. The Gusu Tianqi at this moment was too terrifying. The instant he appeared, he radiated a towering might that caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Powerful. The spectators stared at Gusu Tianqi as their hearts trembled. On the other side, Jun Mingchen stood proudly on the platform. Behind him, the shadow of the ancient king manifested, resembling a supreme king. A crack opened up in his body as a brilliant light flashed, transforming into a clear sky's worldly diagram that floated in the air, resembling the boundless starry skies. This clear sky's worldly diagram was like a world of starry skies, and within it, there were signs of life. This clear sky's worldly diagram existed in the center of that supreme king, as though it was the body of that supreme king. The spectators stared intently at the clear sky's worldly diagram, as their hearts trembled. What ability was this exactly? The entire starry skies seemed to be enveloped by a supreme king, and the body of this king was like a painting of the starry skies. It was rumored that for those with heaven-defying physiques, their astral souls and constellations were all destined by fate. Was Jun Mingchen such an existence? Two supreme geniuses, in addition to Hua Taishu's eyes of samsara, the top three rankers are truly three supreme geniuses. From a certain perspective, it wasn't wrong for Dong Xingting to choose these three as the top three rankers. Qin Wentian was also very strong. His overall combat prowess was extremely high. However, he had yet to display an ability that would stun the spectators in an instant. Such a person could be considered a supreme genius, but his malleability might not be as good as the rest. Gusu Tianqi walked step by step towards Jun Mingchen with the blazing furnace in his hand. Half of the sky was burning, while the other half was Jun Mingchen's constellation, the Battle King's shadow, and the clear sky's worldly diagram. Abruptly, Gusu Tianqi pointed his finger forward. From the terrifying blazing furnace, numerous long spears shot out, directly burning Jun Mingchen's Battle King armor. Terrifying sizzling sounds rang out as the blazing furnace constellation erupted forth with destructive flames. Jun Mingchen abruptly clenched his fists as a supreme king glow radiated from him. With a roar, countless war chariots gushed forth from the clear sky's worldly diagram. These war chariots seemed to be forged from the toughest materials, and as they soared through the air, they collided with the long spears, directly exploding apart. Roar! Jun Mingchen howled as he stepped out. From the clear sky's worldly diagram, an incomparably violent windstorm manifested. The war chariots soared through the air while the demonic beasts frenziedly attacked. Their speed was also extremely fast, wanting to engulf the entire sky in the blink of an eye. Too crazy. Is such an attack really the ability of a celestial phenomenon ascendant? With a single roar, he can annihilate countless ordinary characters at the same level as him. The hearts of the spectators trembled. The eyes of those immortal kings were all blazing with heat as they stared at this battle. The blazing flames radiating from Gusu Tianqi grew even more terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that behind the 9 suns, 9 silhouettes appeared, all of them resembling divinities. Kill! Gusu Tianqi roared in rage as the power of multiple constellations erupted forth at the same time. The 9 silhouettes pulled out their long spears from the 9 suns and blasted outwards. Boundless flames gushed forth, transforming into a terrifying solar storm that swept outwards, incinerating everything in its path into nothingness. The number 1 genius of the Eastern Prefecture. Is this the true strength of Gusu Tianqi? The spectators stared at this scene. 9 generations of soul inheritors, each generation of immortal kings. Were those 9 silhouettes the shadows of the 9 generations of immortal kings? Such an attack, could it really be countered by someone at the same level as them? Maybe only Jun Mingchen would be able to do so. The clear sky worldly diagram behind him started to churn madly as terrifying currents of energy converged. Jun Mingchen inclined his head as an incomparably resplendent and terrifying light cascaded onto him. He lifted his fists as a boundless light radiated from them, exuding a sense of supremacy. Kill! Jun Mingchen roared in rage. The fist art he used to defeat Song Ao appeared once more, but this time, it was even stronger than before. The spectators only saw countless fist shadows piercing through the heavens and earth, as though there were thousands of fist lights that directly blasted into the solar storm. In an instant, numerous holes appeared on the solar storm, as cracks spread out in all directions like spiderwebs. Jun Mingchen's fist art was still as powerful as ever, capable of breaking through anything. Below, Zi Qingxian stared at the battle between the two of them as she sighed in her heart. Seems like she was truly one of the weaker ones. Before this, Gusu Tianqi hadn't unleashed his full strength yet. After she returned, she had to work even harder to become stronger. Mengchen will do his best to help you win this battle, pulling down Gusu Tianqi's ranking. But even so, he doesn't intend to let you enter the top 3. But at the very least, you have to defeat him to prove that you've come before. Are you confident? Zi Qingxian stared at the air as she spoke in a low voice. Naturally, she was asking Qin Wentian, who was beside her. Qin Wentian stared at the battle in the air, as his eyes gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. Defeat? How can that be enough? Chapter 885. Zi Qingxian cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian. Seems like Qin Wentian has yet to give up on the top 3 rankings. It was just that she had no idea what method he would use to contend for the top 3 rankings. Dong Xingting didn't want him to enter. How could he do so? Slowly shifting her gaze over, she stared at the battle in the air. Jun Mengchen and Gusu Tianqi were still fighting. Both of them were so powerful that it was inconceivable, too terrifying. Gusu Tianqi brandished his sun spear, each spear strike radiating the light of the sun. When he shot out, terrifying beams of sunlight would erupt forth, capable of melting everything. However, Jun Mengchen only needed a single punch to destroy all of them. His fist technique was world-shaking. It was the fist of a king. Each of his punches contained boundless might within them. In addition, the speed of their attacks was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they clashed countless times. Rumble. Rumbling sounds rang out from the sun furnace as terrifying flames akin to lava gushed out, transforming into a world-shaking long spear. The 9 silhouettes stretched their palms out as the incomparably gigantic long spears landed in their hands. Gusu Tianqi himself also wielded a long spear. Stepping out, a surge of destructive might gushed towards Jun Mengchen. Die. With a thunderous roar, Gusu Tianqi's long spear pierced out. The gigantic silhouettes unleashed a world-shaking spear strike, locking down the heavens and earth, wanting to nail Jun Mengchen to death in the air. Jun Mengchen howled madly. A fearsome storm barrier gathered before him. Yet under the might of the spear technique, it was shattered apart unceasingly. The clear sky worldly diagram revolved frenziedly as a supreme might flowed unceasingly into Jun Mengchen, causing his king aura to grow even stronger. The king armor on his body was like a crown. King gloves appeared on his hands, and a battle king dragon carriage appeared beneath his feet. Only to see Jun Mengchen lifting his fists as the chaotic energy in the clear sky worldly diagram flowed towards him. The entire space was filled with an aura of desolation. This was an aura that originated from chaos, and was extremely ancient. The space around him trembled violently. This entire space was like a chaotic world, filled with endless war. That was a world of desolation, and Jun Mengchen was the king of that world. Numerous heaven-shaking long spears pierced through the chaotic currents, allowing the destructive qi to gush over. They had to kill Jun Mengchen no matter what. Even if Jun Mengchen was a supreme king, he still had to die. The 9 silhouettes of Gusu Tianqi were like 9 mighty immortal kings. Each of the long spears stabbed out with the might of a sure-kill spear, capable of shattering the heavens and earth. The king aura radiating from Jun Mengchen grew denser and denser. The crowd inclined their heads and stared at this scene. Even immortal kings felt their hearts trembling. This was only at the celestial phenomenon realm. In the future, if Jun Mengchen broke through to immortal foundation or immortal king, what sort of scene would that be? It was simply unimaginable. There were some people who were innately strong. For example, Jun Mengchen and Gusu Tianqi. But there were also some who were innately strong. The most obvious example was Hua Taishu, chaotic world king fist. Jun Mengchen roared in rage. Both his fists punched out, and at this instant, the chaotic currents in the space around him churned, transforming into boundless chaotic fist light. The violet gold king fist transformed into a corporeal violet gold fist that penetrated through space, destroying everything in its path. The boundless violet gold light was so blinding that it stung the eyes of those who looked at it. The boundless chaotic world king fist pierced through the air, clashing against the long spears as a heaven-shaking explosive sound rang out. After which, the chaotic world king fist penetrated through, destroying the long spears as it transformed into boundless violet gold light that blasted towards Gusu Tianqi. Gusu Tianqi's countenance stiffened. He stared at the all-devouring chaotic world king fist rushing over. Gathering all his strength, he struck out with his spear once more. However, rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly. The crowd only saw Gusu Tianqi's body being flung through the air, as the constellation in the sky gradually dimmed before dissipating completely. Gusu Tianqi stood in the air, coughing out a mouthful of blood. His body was injured, but the pain in his heart was even greater. Gusu Tianqi participated in the once-a-100-year immortal banquet of the Dongshengshan Gate. His purpose was to become the number one, the most dazzling existence. He wouldn't allow himself to be defeated, but now he was actually defeated. The top ranker of the Eastern continent, Gusu Tianqi, was defeated. Gusu Tianqi has been defeated. Countless spectators at the immortal banquet felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. Jun Mingchen didn't merely display a miraculous talent. His combat prowess was unparalleled as well. Only to see at this moment, although Jun Mingchen was panting heavily, he had defeated the powerful Gusu Tianqi. This battle was sufficient for his name to resound through the entire Eastern Prefecture. The atmosphere on the ancient battlefield quietened down, extremely quiet. Even at the immortal banquet, no one spoke. It was as though everyone was still immersed in the conclusion of this battle. After a long time, Gusu Tianqi drew in a deep breath as he spoke. "I've lost." As the sound of his voice faded, Jun Mingchen retracted his aura. His constellation vanished, and the king armor vanished as he reverted back to that harmless-looking young man. His gaze turned to Qin Wentian and Zi Qingxian as a joyful smile appeared on his face. He had won. This victory caused him to be one of the top 3 rankers. It wasn't just because of the talent he displayed, but rather, it was a combination of talent and strength. He had won. This victory caused Gusu Tianqi to have a defeat. As for him, Jun Mingchen, he had no defeats at all. Jun Mingchen then turned his gaze onto Dong Xingting as he spoke. "I have no defeats at all and Gusu Tianqi is already defeated. In that case, what about my ranking? Everyone, what do you all think?" Dong Xingting turned his gaze to the immortal kings at the side. Although Jun Mingchen's ranking in the first 2 rounds was slightly lower, the potential he displayed today, as well as his undefeated battle record, His Majesty would surely like him. He should be ranked first. An immortal king laughed. They naturally understood Dong Xingting's intentions, and also understood Dongxing Heaven Emperor's intentions. Dongxing Heaven Emperor would definitely accept Jun Mingchen as his personal disciple. Jun Mingchen and Gusu Tianqi were both disciples that Dongxing Heaven Emperor would like. Good. Since this is the case, Jun Mingchen can be ranked first. Gusu Tianqi was defeated and should be ranked second. Dong Xingting slowly spoke, his words causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. This immortal banquet was truly filled with twists and turns. But in the end, would Jun Mingchen be ranked first? This was too unbelievable. Gusu Tianqi was only ranked second. This little fellow originally already had heaven-shaking talent. Now that His Majesty would personally nurture him, he would surely soar up into the heavens. In the Cloud Prefecture, the Idle Cloud Immortal King was extremely happy as he laughed heartily. A genius of their Cloud Prefecture would be ranked first in the Immortal Banquet. How glorious was this! It had never happened before since ancient times. However, the other Immortal Kings of the Cloud Prefecture weren't so excited. Their smiles were stiff. Cloud Prefecture, 3 of them are in the top 10, including the top ranker. The more the Idle Cloud Immortal King thought about it, the happier he got. Before this, the other Immortal Kings of the other prefectures were still bragging in front of him. Now this was truly a formless face-smacking. The Cloud Prefecture isn't bad this time around. Dong Xingting also praised, causing the Idle Cloud Immortal King to feel even more proud. This time around he could finally hold his head up high. Jun Mingchen, I'm very optimistic about you. In the future, don't let the immortal sect down. Dong Xingting smiled as he stared at Jun Mingchen. He gave Jun Mingchen the top ranker because he wanted to recruit Jun Mingchen, making Jun Mingchen forget about the grudges between him and Jun Mingchen. But Your Highness, since I'm the top ranker, if my senior brother defeated Gu Sitianqi, why can't he be in the top 3? Jun Mingchen asked in doubt. I've already said it before. For this auction, one's talent and combat prowess will be considered. Your talent is extremely shocking and your performance in the 3rd round convinced everyone. You deserve to be the top ranker. But for Qin Wentian, if he merely defeated Gu Sitianqi, he would be ranked in the top 3 based on his performance in the 3rd round. Gu Sitianqi would be eliminated. This isn't fair. Dong Xingting explained. I won't be defeated again. Gu Sitianqi's countenance was like ice as he spoke. He had already been defeated once. Yet Dong Xingting and Jun Mingchen were discussing the possibility of him losing again in public. You better rest first and recover your combat prowess. At this moment Qin Wentian spoke, his words causing Gu Sitianqi to coldly stare at him. If you want to fight, let's do it now. Even if I defeated you, the Dong Shengshan Gate doesn't intend to let me enter the top 3. Let alone when you have yet to recover to your peak condition. If I fight against you now, even if I win, I'm afraid Your Highness Dong Xingting would have something to say. Qin Wentian emotionlessly spoke, his words causing Dong Xingting to furrow his brows. Qin Wentian's words were clearly implying that the Dong Shengshan Gate was targeting him. Take a rest. Before this, I'm sure you also thought that you wouldn't be defeated. But since you've already lost once, it's better to be more cautious. Qin Wentian continued when he saw the sharpness in Gu Sitianqi's eyes. Since you say so, I'll wait. Gu Sitianqi replied. After which, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes in meditation. The gazes of the spectators turned to Qin Wentian. The words of this fellow were filled with an intense self-confidence. The top 10 geniuses were still on the battle platform. Staring at them, the immortal kings couldn't help but to sigh in admiration. Some of them weren't weak, but they were still at the bottom of the rankings with unwillingness in their hearts. They didn't know if their state of heart would be affected by this setback, and would never be able to recover from it. Most probably, there's only one more battle left. However, Dong Xingting seems to have already decided on the rankings. This battle has no influence on the rankings at all. It's just a battle for Qin Wentian to prove himself. The hearts of the spectators mused. Even the atmosphere at the immortal banquet turned much quieter. Everyone was quietly waiting for the final battle. After this battle, the once-in-100 years grand banquet would finally come to an end. After a long time, Gu Sitianqi's eyes opened as a dazzling light erupted forth, terrifying to the extreme. He stared at Qin Wentian as he asked, "Are you done?" Qin Wentian glanced at Gu Sitianqi before standing up. He stared at Dong Xingting and spoke, "I won't say anything about what happened before. Since Your Highness said that my performance earlier showed that my talent wasn't high enough, I only hope that for this final battle, Your Highness would be able to see things clearly and not taint the word fairness of the Dong Shengshan Gate. The eyes of all the seniors here are like torches, logic is clear in their hearts." As he spoke, his silhouette slowly walked towards the center of the battle platform as he stared at the geniuses gathered here. "Your opponent is me." Gu Sitianqi walked towards him as he coldly spoke. "You aren't my opponent." Qin Wentian spoke in arrogance. He swept his gaze over everyone as he spoke. "Gu Sitianqi, Feather King Ruthless Qin Ta Yi Qianshan. I hope everyone can give me a chance and come at me together." Chapter 886. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice rang out, the originally silent atmosphere turned even more silent. Even the sound of the wind could be heard clearly. Countless gazes landed on Qin Wentian. Their faces were filled with shock, as though they didn't dare to believe that Qin Wentian was the one who spoke those words. The 10 chosen walked up the platform. Although they weren't as tyrannical as Gu Sitianqi and Qin Wentian, how could there be weaklings among them? If one fought alone, they might be insta-defeated by Qin Wentian. But if there were 5 of them, including Gu Sitianqi, the amplification of their attacks wouldn't be as simple as adding them together. Let's ask, if 5 of them attacked at the same time, Would the effect be the same as 5 of them attacking individually? If they joined forces, the might they could unleash would be fatal. This was especially so for geniuses of this level. How terrifying would that be? It was simply unimaginable. But Qin Wentian actually said that he would give them a chance. He wanted Gusi Tianqi, Feather King Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian to come at him together. Was he crazy? In order to prove his strength, in order to enter the top 3, he wanted to fight against 5 people? Are you insulting me? Gusi Tianqi coldly spoke. Wanting him to join forces with the other 4 to fight against Qin Wentian was simply ridiculous. This person was simply too arrogant. Fight against me first. Among the participants, Feather King was the most sullen one. As a young king of the winged devil race, right now, he couldn't even maintain his position within the top 5. How cruel was this to him? Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian, although they were all defeated by Qin Wentian, they were all staring coldly at him right now. You guys have already been defeated so miserably. Yet you guys still have such laughable arrogance. Qin Wentian stepped out, turning his gaze onto the crowd. The reason why he chose to fight against the 5 of them was because Dong Xingting made things difficult for him. He could only use this method to prove himself, letting everyone witness this battle. If Dong Xingting still didn't allow him to enter the top 3, it would be equivalent to him smacking his own face. If the news of this immortal banquet at the Dong Shengshan Gate were to circulate out, he would definitely become a laughingstock. In an instant, boundless battle might erupted from Qin Wentian. Brilliant light illuminated the heavens as terrifying rumbling sounds rang out. Qin Wentian's body expanded, becoming hundreds of meters tall. The others had to tilt their heads to see him. In front of them, only his feet could be seen. Boundless brilliance flowed around his body, as if he was wearing a demonic armor. A layer of blood-red brilliance bloomed on Qin Wentian's body, which was extremely demonic. In the air, boundless astral light cascaded downwards, transforming into a terrifying constellation. Demon Sovereign Astral Soul, Violet Gold Suppression Constellation. An incomparably violent gigantic demon appeared, revolving around Qin Wentian's back. It was the same size as Qin Wentian, and exuded a towering demonic might, akin to a demon king from the primordial era. An intense roar thundered out, shaking the heavens and earth, after which, the roars of the other demonic beasts resounded in unison. Within the constellation, numerous terrifying gigantic demons appeared, each of them exuding a fearsome aura similar to Qin Wentian's. These demonic beasts stood in different directions, as though they wanted to envelop the entire battle platform. Gusu Tianqi and the others felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. This fellow, was he going all out? Was he doing this to prove his strength? Behind Qin Wentian, numerous gigantic violet golden silhouettes could be seen, resembling divinities. Terrifying runic light flowed around their bodies, and each of them radiated a fearsome pressure that permeated the air. Do you guys really think that you are very powerful? Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the 5 of them. On his body, there seemed to be a pure and flawless white flame circulating around him, enveloping the entire starry space. Gusu Tianqi inclined his head, staring at the 100-meter-tall giant. His aura frenziedly gushed forth as he soared up into the air, executing his battle art. His blazing furnace constellation manifested, with 9 divinities wielding long spears in their hands, standing guard behind him. Similarly, terrifying sun flames circulated around his body. However, when he stood in front of Qin Wentian, his aura was clearly weaker than before. I've already said it. The 5 of you can come at me together. If there's only one of you, you won't stand a chance at all. Qin Wentian stretched out a gigantic palm. On this palm, divine inscriptions could be seen circulating around it. The divine energy in his body was unceasingly channeled into his palm, resembling numerous ancient bells. His divine energy also contained white flames within, causing the ancient bells to transform into a pure and flawless white color. Feather King howled in rage as his aura towered up into the sky. A pair of violet gold wings appeared as he soared up into the air. The color of the sky changed as a powerful ancient devil manifested. His eyes stared at the gigantic figure before him as his battle intent towered up into the sky. Boom! It was as though there was a winged devil protecting him. An incomparably gigantic winged devil shadow appeared behind Feather King, as its pair of violet gold wings blotted out the sky. "There's no need for you guys to act." Gusu Tianqi roared in rage. He stepped out as the 9 divinities shot out their long spears at the same time. A destructive sun storm blasted out, wanting to melt everything. Qin Wentian directly blasted out with his palm. In an instant, an incomparably gigantic white ancient bell appeared in the air, as though it could suppress everything. This white ancient bell directly slammed into the tempest as boundless white-colored calamitous energy gushed forth. In just an instant, the tempest was completely destroyed. "I've already said it. You aren't my opponent." Qin Wentian lowered his head, his gigantic eyes glanced at Gusu Tianqi, causing his countenance to turn incredibly unsightly to behold. Was this Qin Wentian's full strength? To think that he was actually so powerful. With a lift of his hand, the gigantic ancient bell actually destroyed the sunstorm he unleashed. Not only for Gusu Tianqi, everyone in the immortal banquet felt their hearts trembling. The Qin Wentian at this moment was simply too powerful. Boom! Qin Ta of the heavenly god race had an extremely irascible personality. Right now, he transformed into a heavenly deity as his body expanded explosively. He roared in rage. "I really want to see how strong you are at your peak." Yi Qianqian's silhouette soared up into the air. On the battle platform, Yi Qianqian no longer had anything to lose. His ranking might very well be the highest. In that case, what else was there for him to be concerned about? Defeat, it didn't matter. He also wanted to see how strong Qin Wentian was at this moment. The last one was ruthless. His silhouette also soared up into the air. The 5 of them surrounded Qin Wentian, each of them radiating a terrifying aura. "Let's attack together." Qin Wentian roared. Momentarily, the silhouettes all rushed out at the same time. Yi Qianqian directly slashed out with his sword, cleaving apart space, aiming for Qin Wentian's head. Ruthless spear of darkness pierced through the heavens and earth, aiming for the back of Qin Wentian's head. Qin Ta blasted out with his heavenly god fist, penetrating through the air. Feather King transformed into a winged devil. His silhouette flickered as he directly lunged towards Qin Wentian. Gusu Tianqi appeared in front of Qin Wentian. He took out a supreme sun spear from his sun furnace and stabbed it towards Qin Wentian. Roar! A violent roar shook the heavens and earth. As long as the demonic beast king protecting Qin Wentian could protect him, the demonic beasts that descended from the heavens would directly attack the 5 of them. Qin Wentian's palm slammed towards Gusu Tianqi's attack, but his eyes were staring up at the sky. Everywhere his gaze landed, the numerous violet gold figures that resembled divinities actually floated up. Boom, boom, boom. Each of the figures slammed downwards, landing in a certain location. It was as though these figures were forming a marvelous diagram. The 5 experts frenziedly attacked Qin Wentian. However, to the shock of the spectators, they discovered that they couldn't even break through Qin Wentian's defense. If Qin Wentian wanted to defeat the other 4 with the exception of Gusu Tianqi, it would be extremely easy. Even when Gusu Tianqi attacked, Qin Wentian's palms were constantly repelled. However, Qin Wentian wasn't in a hurry to act. What does he want to do? The gazes of the spectators turned to the sky. The numerous divinity-like figures gathered together to form an incomparably gigantic diagram. This diagram abruptly revolved, emitting a fearsome might. Gusu Tianqi inclined his head and stared at the sky. He could feel an incomparably great threat from the diagram. After which, he saw Qin Wentian stretching out his hands and waving them in the air. That incomparably gigantic diagram descended from the sky as numerous figures revolved frenziedly around it. The position Qin Wentian was standing at was precisely in the center of the diagram. A supreme pressure bore down on them. Gusu Tianqi and the other 4 were enveloped by the gigantic diagram. Feeling a stifling pressure, they frenziedly unleashed their attacks. Yet the terrifying might of the diagram seemed to have locked down their attacks, suppressing them and destroying them. The 9 figures behind Gusu Tianqi suffered an attack. Boundless light blasted over, destroying the 9 figures unceasingly. The numerous suns also stopped radiating their might as they were destroyed by the boundless light. At this moment, regardless of Gusu Tianqi or Feather King, they discovered that their bodies were being suppressed by a supreme pressure. Their movements became extremely slow. Get down. Qin Wentian glanced at Yi Qianqian. After which, a surge of suppressive energy blasted onto him, slamming him into the ground. Go. Qin Wentian turned his gaze to Qin Ta. After which Qin Ta was flung through the air. Next, Ruthless and Feather King roared in rage. Yet they were still unable to block that suppressive energy. The suppressive energy directly slammed into their bodies, and could even kill them directly. However, Qin Wentian didn't mind doing this. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted everyone to see clearly, and that he didn't want Dong Xingting to have any excuses, he wouldn't have dragged the other four over. To him, these four were of no threat at all. Is there still a need to fight? Qin Wentian turned his gaze to Gusu Tianqi. After which, the light from the diagram landed on Gusu Tianqi. At this instant, Gusu Tianqi couldn't move at all. The boundless suppressive energy blasted over, shattering all of his defenses. Qin Wentian slammed out with his palm, directly sending him flying towards the direction of the banquet. An immortal king from the eastern prefecture waved his hand and caught hold of Gusu Tianqi's body. However, his gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian. The gazes of everyone were on Qin Wentian. This was the last battle, and it was also the most shocking one. Qin Wentian single-handedly treated all the geniuses at the Dong Shengshan Gate as nothing. No matter how many geniuses there were, he alone could destroy them all. Not only could he defeat them, he could even kill them if he wanted to. Qin Wentian's body was over 100 meters tall. The light radiating from him illuminated the skies, as though he was the true supreme character of this immortal banquet. When he stared at Dong Xingting, he spoke. Is this enough? Chapter 887. Do you think this is enough? Qin Wentian's voice rang out in this space. Staring at that 100-meter-tall figure, all the immortal kings were speechless. If this was the case, could Dong Xingting still say that he wouldn't allow Qin Wentian to enter the top three? Before this, Dong Xingting once said that the reason why he allowed Jun Mengchen to enter the top three and not Qin Wentian was because Jun Mengchen had displayed shocking talent while Qin Wentian's performance wasn't stunning enough. In that case, Qin Wentian's performance was undoubtedly telling everyone that he, too, could also dazzle the heavens, causing the entire immortal banquet to be in awe. Gusu Tianqi, the top ranker of the Eastern Prefecture, with a single disciple for 9 generations, each generation had produced immortal kings. However, Qin Wentian domineeringly defeated him. Not only so, even if the other 4 participants of the top 10 were added in, not a single one of them could withstand an attack from Qin Wentian. What else was there to prove? Qin Wentian alone could disregard half of the 10 participants of the immortal banquet, defeating all of them, including Gusu Tianqi, who was the most popular. A total of 10 participants, he defeated 5. If Dong Xingting still didn't allow him to enter the top 3, it would truly be smacking his own face. This was clearly unfair, and this grand event of the Dong Shengshan Gate, that only happens once every 100 years, would also be covered in dust and dirt, losing all meaning to it. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen, these 2 fellow apprentices, truly exudes magnificence through the generations. The hearts of the spectators mused. The idol cloud immortal king was also stunned, staring at Qin Wentian on the battle platform as a strange expression appeared on his face. Were the top 2 rankers of the top 3 going to be taken down by the geniuses of his cloud prefecture? The expressions of the experts from the other major powers of the cloud prefecture stiffened. They didn't know what to feel in their hearts. Qin Wentian had a grudge against them, and they even mocked Qin Wentian for not being able to be ranked at the top. But now it seems that Qin Wentian's radiance was no longer limited to the cloud prefecture. Even among the geniuses of the 13 prefectures, he was the most dazzling. What could Gu Zhantian be compared to him? At this moment, Gu Zhantian, Zhou Yu and the others no longer knew what they were feeling in their hearts. They didn't even have the qualifications to enter the top 10. What was even more laughable was that Gu Zhantian had once provoked Qin Wentian. But from the looks of it now, given his talent, he wasn't even qualified to carry Qin Wentian's shoes. The gap between them was insurmountable. It turned out that in the previous battles, Qin Wentian had never used his full strength. It was not until this moment that he truly unleashed his strongest power. This was the most perfect him, the most powerful him. Princess Liuli turned her gaze onto Qin Wentian before shifting her gaze onto Jun Mingchen. The talent of these two could be considered unparalleled in the 13 prefectures. In that case, if they were placed in other locations in the immortal realms, they would also be geniuses who stood at the peak. There was a possibility that her father, the White Emperor, had predicted this. However, who was it? She turned her gaze onto Dong Xingting. Before this, Dong Xingting had intentionally targeted Qin Wentian. Although he had explained it, it was still a little forced. Now what should he decide? Many thoughts flashed through Dong Xingting's mind. If right now, he still didn't allow Qin Wentian to enter the top 3, it would undoubtedly mean that he was denying the words he said not long ago, and was clearly targeting Qin Wentian. In that case, would he really allow Qin Wentian to enter the top 3, and become the sage child of the Dong Shengshan Gate, the personal disciple of her father? Qin Wentian, would he do something shocking and damage the reputation of the Dong Shengshan Gate? If this young man wishes to pursue Qin, he would definitely need an extraordinary identity. Since he is in the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, becoming the personal disciple of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor is undoubtedly the best choice. If not, if he were to rely on himself, even if he wanted to leave the 13 prefectures, he would have to spend an extremely long time. By the time he truly came into contact with the upper echelons of the Evergreen Kingdom, it would have already been countless years. If he is smart enough, he should know what to do. Dong Xingting silently mused. Why not temporarily give Qin Wentian a chance? As for how he would treat him in the future, that was still up to him. As he thought of this, a smile flickered in Dong Xingting's eyes. He stood up and slowly spoke. Being able to witness the shocking talents of the various geniuses, this is the fortune of my Dong Shengshan Gate. Qin Wentian, I've said it before, I won't intentionally target you. This time around, the combat prowess you displayed can only be described as breathtaking. In this round, you didn't lose a single battle. In this round, you are the first ranker. In addition, although you were the last ranker in the first round, you still managed to enter the top 3 in the second round. You aren't inferior to your junior apprentice brother Jun Mingchen. In that case, the rankings of the two of you will truly make things difficult for me. Dong Xingting had a relaxed smile on his face. It was as though a single glance from him was sufficient to ease the tension in the air. It was as though he had never intentionally targeted anyone before. In addition, that last sentence of his was undoubtedly an official announcement that Qin Wentian had entered the top 3. Dong Xingting said that the rankings of Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen made things difficult for him. But earlier, he also said that he would rank Jun Mingchen as the first ranker. This meant that Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen would be the top 2 rankers of this immortal banquet. First and second rankers. Ha ha ha. The Idol Cloud Immortal King laughed happily. The first and second rankers both originated from his Cloud Prefecture. However, the countenance of the Deep Flame Immortal King was extremely gloomy. His disciple Blackpeak was killed by Qin Wentian on the battle platform. And now, Qin Wentian still managed to break through the restrictions of the rules, and entered the top 3. Even if Dong Xingting wanted to stop Qin Wentian, he wouldn't be able to do so. The Deep Flame Immortal King's eyes flashed with coldness as he laughed coldly in his heart. He was very clear about Dong Xingting's personality. Dong Xingting's will was extremely resolute, and he had a strong personality. He could allow Qin Wentian to enter the top 3, but in the future, after Qin Wentian takes the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as his master, it would be impossible for him to rise up to the heavens. The days for Qin Wentian were still very long. At this moment, I shall officially announce the top 10 rankers of the once 100-year grand banquet held by the Dong Shengshan Gate. Dong Xingting's voice rang out. The azure dragon in the air howled in rage as the soldiers around the battle platform pointed their spears at the sky and roared in unison, their voices shaking the heavens and earth as their might towered up into the sky. Even those in the immortal banquet all stood up. expressing how important this moment was. Rank number 10 Yi Qianqian. Dong Xingting called out. Yi Qianqian's countenance was incomparably calm. There was no hint of complacency in him at all. Ranked number 9 Qin Ta. Dong Xingting continued. Qin Ta's countenance was also extremely calm. Ranked number 8 Ruthless. Ranked number 7 Mo1. Ranked number 6 Zi Qingxian. Ranked number 5 Feather King. The spectators all sighed when they heard the rankings. Although Zi Qingxian defeated Feather King, her ranking was still placed behind him. Evidently, Dong Xingting decided to place both Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen into the top 3. As for Zi Qingxian, there was no need for her to take care of her and nobody would say anything about it. Naturally, Zi Qingxian didn't really care if she didn't enter the top 3. Ranked number 4, Hua Taishu. Dong Xingting's voice rang out, his words causing the spectators to tremble. Qin Wentian ultimately managed to enter the top 3. However, Dong Xingting placed Hua Taishu at number 4 and Gusu Tianqi into the top 3. His meaning was very clear. Before this, it didn't matter because both Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu wanted to enter the top 3. But now, only one of them could enter the top 3. Since Hua Taishu had no intention of taking the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as his master, Gusu Tianqi had to exit the top 3. As for Gusu Tianqi, his royal father, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, wanted to accept him as a disciple. How could Gusu Tianqi be one of the top 3 rankers? Hence, Dong Xingting saved a spot for him while Hua Taishu was eliminated. The rankings of the two of them were already disputed. For the first 2 rounds, they were evenly matched. But for the third round, Hua Taishu only fought a single battle and didn't fight against Gusu Tianqi. The two of them specialized in different aspects, and it was hard to compare them. No matter who Dong Xingting placed first, he would still be biased. Evidently, Dong Xingting had already made his decision and placed Gusu Tianqi into the top 3. For this point, no one would say anything, because even Hua Taishu himself didn't want to fight for the top 3 positions. Number 3 Gusu Tianqi. Dong Xingting finally announced the top 3 rankings. The moment his name was announced, everything seemed to be settled. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen had already locked onto the top 2 positions. Number 2 Jun Mengchen. Dong Xingting spoke again. As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wentian. Dong Xingting placed him in the top 3. Qin Wentian is the top ranker of this batch of trials. Dong Xingting had a smile on his face. The Immortal Kings all applauded, congratulating the top rankers. Congratulations. Your Majesty can finally accept 3 more disciples. Congratulations as well. Senior Immortal Kings, please return to your seats. The 10 of you can return to your seats as well. Dong Xingting waved his hands as he smiled, exuding an incomparably carefree aura. After that, everyone returned to their seats. In the direction of the Cloud Prefecture, the Idle Cloud Immortal King stood there to welcome the return of Qin Wentian and the other 2. Mu Yan also raised his wine cup to congratulate Qin Wentian and the other 2. Who would have thought that during the battle in the Driftsnow City, Qin Wentian's brilliance was extremely dazzling. But even so, he didn't expect that Qin Wentian would be able to stand at the peak of the Dongshengshan Gate. Qin Wentian and the other 2 exchanged glances. After that, Qin Wentian patted Zi Qingxian on her shoulder, consoling her. Come everyone, let's drink and celebrate the conclusion of this grand banquet. Dong Xingting seemed to be very happy. He didn't feel the slightest bit of unhappiness at the fact that Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen obtained the top 2 positions. Your Highness, the curtains haven't been drawn yet. It's about time for the treasures to be brought out. Jun Mengchen heartily spoke, as though he was worried that if he rejected Dong Xingting, he wouldn't be able to obtain the treasures. Yeah, for the top 10 and top 3 rankers, there will be different rewards. Dong Xingting spoke in a heroic manner. After that, 10 beautiful maidens walked down from the platform, each holding a different treasure in their hands as they walked towards the top 10 rankers. The treasures that the crowd paid the most attention to were naturally the treasures of the top 3 rankers. Gusu Tianqi was a flying type immortal treasure. When the maiden took it out from her interspatial ring, An incomparably resplendent flying boat appeared before the eyes of everyone. This is an immortal king boat. Dong Xingting smiled. Gusu Tianqi stood up and accepted the boat. In the direction of the Cloud Prefecture, there were two treasures displayed. One of them was an immortal rampart, the Paragon Immortal Rampart. Boundless immortal light radiated from it, causing the hearts of those from the Cloud Prefecture to be filled with desire. As for the other treasure, it was a gigantic rune bone belonging to a Paragon sky rock. On the surface of the rune bone, mysterious runic inscriptions could be seen circulating around it, as an incomparably terrifying shadow of a sky rock appeared there. It was like a Paragon sky rock, able to roar high up in the 9 heavens. Many thanks to your highness. Jun Mingchen's lips curled into a smile as he kept the immortal rampart. Many thanks to your highness. Qin Wentian also had a profound smile on his face as he kept the rune bone. Chapter 888. Jun Mingchen laughed happily. 2 out of the 3 of them had already completed the mission of the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Right now, the rewards of the Dong Shengshan Gate were already in his hands. When they return, they would also be rewarded by the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Such a good thing, how could he not be happy? In addition, he also understood that his senior brother Qin had a relationship with the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, and was once abandoned by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. This was why the Deep Flame Immortal King and Dongxing Ting wanted to make things difficult for his senior brother Qin, even implicating him and Zi Qingxian. This caused him to be filled with anticipation. Since they abandoned his senior brother Qin before, they should let the Dongxing Heaven Emperor experience the same feeling. As he thought of this, the smile on Jun Mingchen's face grew even more radiant. He lifted his wine cup and drained it in a single gulp. At this moment, Dong Xingting's gaze was still on Jun Mingchen. When he saw the radiant smile on Jun Mingchen's face, his mood wasn't bad at all. Jun Mingchen and Qin Wentian both became part of the top 3. In this case, they should be satisfied, right? He would slowly train them in the future. The immortal banquet this time around can already be considered perfect. Let me toast the various elders and geniuses once more. Dong Xingting raised his cup again as he smiled. And also to all the friends who came here to spectate. Come, let's toast together. An immortal king laughed. It's just that we are still a step away from perfection. Let me first congratulate His Majesty for accepting 3 more outstanding disciples, and also congratulate the Dong Shengshan Gate for gaining more geniuses. Another immortal king laughed, causing the other immortal kings to laugh as well. Right, congratulations to His Majesty in advance. Everyone happily drank their wine. It was like the matter of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepting disciples had already been confirmed. The 3 of them would soon become the disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Because from their perspective, this immortal banquet, fame, treasures, everything else paled in comparison to becoming the personal disciple of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. This was what these geniuses yearned for the most. Didn't they come here because they wanted to become the personal disciple of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor? How vast was the immortal realms, how many experts were there? Geniuses were as common as the clouds, and there was no lack of supreme characters. However, what did the immortal realms lack the most? A top-notch expert. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor, the Emperor of the Eastern Sage 13 Prefectures, the controller of the entire 13 prefectures. How terrifying was his authority. Acknowledging the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as one's master would instantly elevate one's status and identity to a whole new level. To countless people, it could be said that they had truly soared to the heavens in a single bound. In the future, the resources, treasures, and the level of contact they had with them would all undergo a complete transformation. No one had ever thought of rejecting such an honor. In fact, such a thought didn't even cross their minds. Even for Dong Xingting, this thought only flashed past his mind. Hence he was on guard against Qin Wentian. But after thinking about it, he himself had already given up on this idea. His father, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, was the ruler of the 13 prefectures. Little fellow, you better cherish this opportunity well. At this moment, there were even immortal kings who raised their wine cups to Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen. Young and arrogant. These two little fellows are much more arrogant compared to me when I was young. However, only characters like them are qualified to become His Majesty's disciple." At the immortal banquet, the focus of everyone was now on Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen. Although Dong Xingting had said that the immortal banquet could be considered perfect, they understood that the main event has yet to come. His Majesty accepting a disciple was the perfect ending to this once-in-a-hundred-years event. "Brother Qin." At this moment, someone called out to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over only to see that the person who called out was none other than Zhou Yu. His brows furrowed as his countenance turned cold, only to see Zhou Yu raising his wine cup to Qin Wentian as he smiled. "Brother Qin, I, Zhou Yu, hereby apologize for the unhappiness that occurred earlier. I will punish myself by drinking 3 cups of wine as punishment. I hope that Brother Qin won't blame me." Right now, the gazes of everyone were on Qin Wentian. He was already destined to be the disciple of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, and the future sage child of the Dongshengshan Gate. As long as he matures, his authority would definitely rise up to the heavens. And given Qin Wentian's talent, in addition to the guidance of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, as well as the nurturing of the Dongshengshan Gate, it was impossible for him not to be powerful even if he didn't want to. And before this, Zhou Yu had an intense conflict with Qin Wentian. But that was because he didn't expect that Qin Wentian would be able to reach this step. Even the Deep Flame Immortal King personally came over to deny it. Yet Qin Wentian managed to do it. And Zhou Yu evidently wasn't willing to make an enemy out of a character who might have great authority in the 13 prefectures in the future. The Battle Heaven's Immortal Manor was also unwilling. Hence, they sent Zhou Yu to apologize first. Scram. Qin Wentian spat out. In an instant, Zhou Yu's countenance turned ashen as the smile on his face froze. Although he didn't manage to enter the top 10, he was still a Heaven's Chosen whose name could shake an entire region. He was prideful in his heart and was hot-blooded in his youth. Taking the initiative to apologize only to be told to scram? The countenances of the experts from the Dongshengshan Gate all turned unsightly. Seems like Qin Wentian had no intentions of reconciling. When the other major powers saw this scene, they all gave up on the thought of going up to apologize. Initially, they wanted to reconcile with Qin Wentian, but now, they understood that it was impossible. Zhou Yu stared coldly at the departing back of Qin Wentian. After that, he drank the wine in his cup and with a clench of his fist, the wine cup shattered into pieces. However, he didn't say anything. Qin Wentian completely ignored Zhou Yu. To him, there was no way he would take Eastern Sage as his master. Naturally, even if he grew stronger in the future, he wouldn't purposely go to the Driftsnow city to take revenge on those major powers. After all, although those people wanted to deal with him, it was also a form of tempering for him. He wouldn't be so bored as to purposely take revenge on them. However, Zhou Yu had violated Qin Wentian's taboos. Before this, when Jun Mingchen was poisoned, Zhou Yu cursed him. If he apologized, would Qin Wentian reconcile with him and call him brother? This would only cause Qin Wentian to feel disgust in his heart. Some experts from the major powers of the Eastern Prefecture also came over, toasting to Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen, intending to befriend them. The Dongshengshan Gate was located in the Eastern Prefecture. The disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, as well as the sage-child characters of the Dongshengshan Gate, were naturally extremely valuable to them. Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen didn't reject anyone. They didn't speak much and just quietly drank their wine. At this moment, a lithe and graceful silhouette walked towards Qin Wentian. Momentarily, the gazes of many experts were attracted to her. In fact, many of the experts from the Dongshengshan Gate had a hint of wariness in their eyes. This person who was walking towards Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen was none other than Princess Liuli. The Idol Cloud Immortal King stood up and personally welcomed them. He smiled. Princess Liuli's name, although Idol Cloud is in the Cloud Prefecture, I've also heard of it. Senior is too polite. Princess Liuli smiled. After all, these were all immortal kings. She naturally had to show the proper etiquette. Let me toast to the two of them. Princess Liuli stared at Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen as she spoke. The matter her father entrusted to her was extremely important, and there was a high possibility that it was related to these two. Hence she personally came over. The idle cloud immortal king nodded. He then turned to Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen and introduced, Qin Wentian, Jun Mengchen, this is the daughter of the White Emperor of the Evergreen Kingdom, Princess Liuli. The Chongqing the Great also treats Princess Liuli as his own. Qin Wentian's body trembled violently. He stared at Princess Liuli as a dazzling light flashed in his eyes. He instantly stood up and stared at Princess Liuli. The princess of the Evergreen Kingdom, Qing, wasn't she none other than the princess of the Evergreen Kingdom? The daughter of the Chongqing the Great? The Princess Liuli in front of him actually came from the Evergreen Kingdom, and was also a princess of the Evergreen Kingdom. Princess Liuli had a strange expression on her face when she saw Qin Wentian staring at her. There had never been a man who dared to stare at her in such a manner before. She couldn't help but to feel somewhat unhappy. You should be acquainted with Qing, right? At this moment, Qin Wentian's voice rang out, causing Princess Liuli's eyes to flash with sharpness. She stared at Qin Wentian, as though waiting for him to continue speaking. Princess, if you meet Qing, or on this trip back to the Immortal Empire, help me pass on a message to her. I will definitely look for her. Qin Wentian continued. Dong Xingting's eyes flashed with coldness when he saw this. What relationship do you have with Qing? Princess Liuli stared at Qin Wentian. You will know in a while. Qin Wentian spoke. Princess Liuli furrowed her brows. This young man seemed to be keeping her in suspense. However, if Qin Wentian really had a relationship with Qing, the person her father was looking for might very well be this young man who could affect the fate of the Immortal Empire. I'll be waiting. Princess Liuli slowly walked back, not saying anything more. The atmosphere at the Immortal Banquet was as intense as ever. At this moment, a beam of light shot over from afar. At this instant, the experts of the Dongshengxin Gate, including Dong Xingting, all stood up and stared in that direction. The light was resplendent, and a figure appeared in the beam of light. The moment he appeared, it was as if the entire world revolved around him. We pay our respects to your majesty. Many immortal kings bowed. The Immortal Foundation soldiers and serving girls all knelt on one knee, incomparably respectful. The person who just appeared was none other than the totem of the Dongshengxin Gate, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Father! Dong Xingting happily called out, relinquishing the main seat to his father. Everyone, please take a seat, there's no need to be so polite. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't put on any airs at all. With a single step, he walked over to Dong Xingting's seat and sat down. He glanced at Princess Liuli as he smiled. The daughter of the White Emperor is truly a heaven chosen. Senior praises me too much. Princess Liuli politely replied. My father often mentions senior to junior. When we return, I'll send my regards to your father and that fellow Evergreen. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor was amiable and approachable, as though he was talking to a junior of the younger generation. His gaze turned over as he smiled. Although I didn't attend the Immortal Banquet, I already know what happened. For the geniuses who came here today, they can all join my Dongshengxin Gate and become a core disciple. For the top 3 rankers, stand up and let me take a look. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled. Gusu Tianqi, Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian respectively stood up. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't have a strange expression on his face when he saw Qin Wentian. It was like this was the first time he met Qin Wentian. He only smiled and asked, I once promised that for those who can enter the top 3, they can all join my sect. The 3 of you have outstanding talent, and it's already very rare for you to be able to reach this step. Today, are you willing to join my sect? Junior is willing, Gusu Tianqi stated. His elders were all extremely powerful, but none of them could be compared to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. He naturally wouldn't miss out on such an opportunity. What about the 2 of you? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled and nodded as he stared at Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian. The immortal kings all had casual smiles on their faces as they stared at them, praising them unceasingly. These 3 fellows were about to enter the sect of an immortal emperor. Why would His Majesty need to ask so much? This Jun Mengchen's talent is extraordinary, His Majesty would surely like him. Someone at the side laughed in a low voice. Junior came to participate in this immortal banquet only to temper myself. I have no intention of taking a master. I can only disappoint Senior's kind intentions. Jun Mingchen spoke. The sounds of laughter and whispers in the surroundings abruptly stopped at this instant. There was no warning at all. Not even a peep could be heard from the crowd. Time, at this moment, seemed to have stopped. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's voice rang out. Junior's aptitude is low. I'm not worthy to be your Majesty's disciple. Chapter 889. Qin Wentian's voice rang out in the silence. How clear was it? Although his voice wasn't loud, it caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble as expressions of disbelief appeared on their faces. In fact, there was even a hint of terror in their eyes. Time stopped once again. Even the sound of breathing ceased to exist. The spectators held their breaths as they stared at Jun Mingchen and Qin Wentian, finding it hard to accept this shocking truth. For the 100-year grand event of the Eastern Sage Immortal Sect, at the very end, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor appeared and accepted 3 new disciples. This should have been the most exciting moment, but now, it has become the most shocking moment. Even for those immortal kings, they all felt a sense of panic in their hearts. What sort of characters were immortal kings? They were all at the celestial phenomenon realm. Even if they were supreme geniuses, there was no need for them to care. But why were they panicking? Because at this moment, the moment the Dongxing Heaven Emperor personally arrived, the moment this grand occasion came to a perfect conclusion, the top 2 of the immortal banquet, as well as the first and second rankers, all rejected the Dongxing Heaven Emperor at the same time. Although Jun Mingchen and Qin Wentian's words were tactful, their tone and expressions were so resolute and emotionless. It was as though this moment was already destined. Since they obtained the top 3 positions, this shocking scene was destined to happen. There were many supreme experts here. None of them were fools. Which one of them wasn't an experienced individual? How could they not tell that Jun Mingchen and Qin Wentian already had their own thoughts in their hearts? Even if they obtained the top 3 positions, they wouldn't take Qin Wentian as their master. Instead, they would reject him without any hesitation. That paragon of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, appeared in the most dazzling manner, personally appearing here to complete the final segment of this grand event. It was as though he was the center of attention, appearing there just like that, yet he was directly rejected by the first and second rankers. Wasn't this a slap to the face of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor? There were actually people in the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures who dared to do such a thing. Not only that, the 2 of them were celestial phenomenon ascendants. In the void, it was silent for a long time. The experts didn't dare to breathe too loudly. They still hadn't digested this fact. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's invitation to become his disciple was rejected. Moreover, it was rejected by the 2 strongest people who came to attend the Dongshengshan Gate banquet. This was something that had never happened before. Even Princess Glaze was shocked. Her beautiful eyes flickered. She also didn't expect such a shocking thing to happen. Her beautiful eyes swept over everyone, only to see Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen had incomparably resolute expressions on their faces. As for the others, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It was as though they were waiting for the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor to speak. In the Cloud Prefecture, the Idol Cloud Immortal King's sense of glory had completely vanished. In fact, he even felt a trace of panic as he stared in shock at the 2 of them. Have they gone mad? Impudent. Finally, a berating voice resounded in the silent space. It seemed so cold, and it even faintly carried a murderous aura. The person who spoke was none other than Dongxing Ting. He had once thought of this possibility, but he rejected it. But at this moment, when he personally witnessed it, an intense coldness gushed forth from his heart. Qin Wentian, did he come here for revenge? He actually dared to protect the Dongxing Heaven Emperor in front of so many people? The overlord of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures? Jun Mingchen, do you know what you are doing? I gave you such a chance, but you actually chose to give it up? Dongxing Ting stared at Jun Mingchen. As for Qin Wentian, he had already sent him to the death row. His eyes were filled with killing intent when he stared at Qin Wentian. With regards to Jun Mingchen, he still had a sliver of hope that Qin Wentian would be able to influence him and give him another chance. My royal father, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, is the controller of the 13 prefectures. Your talent is outstanding, and now that my royal father has accepted you as a disciple, your name can shake the world. If you take back your words earlier, I can plead for mercy on your behalf to my royal father. Dong Xingting stared at Jun Mingchen as he spoke. Jun Mingchen similarly stared at Dong Xingting. Although he had a carefree attitude and had a frivolous attitude, when it came to matters of principle, he was clearer than anyone else. He was a disciple of the heavenly talisman realm, and was brought here by his senior brother to temper himself. To him, this was merely a test, a mission. It was impossible for him, Jun Mingchen, to become the disciple of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. In addition, given the grudge between the Dongshengshan Gate and his senior brother, it was also impossible for him to enter the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's tutelage. I came here to participate in the Dongshengshan Gate's grand event, starting from the Cloud Prefecture. All the way until now, it was indeed because I wanted to temper myself and grow stronger. I have no intentions of taking a master. Jun Mingchen stared at Dong Xingting as he resolutely continued. In addition, the reason why the Dongshengshan Gate organized this grand event was that the top 3 rankers would have the qualifications to become the disciple of the immortal emperor. However, this is a two-way choice. I've never heard that the immortal emperor must be my master. If not, I wouldn't have come here today. Upon hearing Jun Mingchen's words, the spectators were all speechless. From ancient times until now, the grand event of the Dongshengshan Gate that was held once every 100 years had long followed the rules. The top 3 rankers with the highest talent would naturally become the disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. This was already a matter of course. There had never been a situation like today where 2 people rejecting the Dongxing Heaven Emperor in such an occasion. Wasn't this simply making things difficult for the immortal emperor? There had never been anyone who dared to make things difficult for the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. This was the first time someone did so. Dong Xingting still wanted to speak, only to hear the Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly interjecting, "Shut up." Dong Xingting halted when he heard this. He glanced at his father only to see that the expression on the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor's face was as calm as ever. His eyes were so deep that no emotions could be seen, be it joy or anger. However, the faint smile on his face had already vanished, replaced by a solemn expression. There was no need to doubt that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor would definitely be angered now. He was the immortal emperor, an immortal king character. How could he not be angry when his face was slapped by 2 juniors in public? Everyone sit down. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. What status did he have? Even if he was angered in his heart, he wouldn't reveal any of it. Everyone respectively sat down, but the atmosphere was still extremely heavy. Nobody spoke. You guys are fellow apprentices. Which sect did you join? Who is your master? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor sat there, staring at Qin Wentian as he asked. His eyes seemed to be able to see through Qin Wentian. Just a single gaze actually caused Qin Wentian to feel a terrifying pressure. That voice rang out in his ears. It was like the voice of the great Tao, pressing down on his mental state, wanting him to obediently tell the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. A surge of aura gushed forth from Qin Wentian. His blood was seething as he stared at the terrifying eyes of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Clearly, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't release any aura, yet it was still so terrifying. This was the disparity between their cultivation bases. Your Majesty, there's no need for you to worry about this. Qin Wentian still maintained his politeness. No matter what he was thinking in his heart, before he had sufficient strength, he still had to maintain the proper etiquette when facing immortal emperors. Naturally, he wouldn't bow and scrape. He still had his own principles, and he had his own pride. Is it because of the matter back then? You intentionally came here to humiliate me? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly spoke, as though he was talking about an extremely ordinary matter. Such an aura made Qin Wentian involuntarily admire him. Back then, I should have taken your Majesty as my master. But after that, Your Majesty requested that I only have freedom once every 1,000 years. Junior begged Your Majesty to retract that order, and in exchange, I was abandoned by Your Majesty due to my poor character. Maybe to Your Majesty, this is just an insignificant matter, because in Your Majesty's eyes, I'm insignificant. Even if you trample on my dignity, it's nothing more than an insignificant matter. In fact, there's a high possibility that Your Majesty would forget about this matter the moment you turn around. Qin Wentian laughed. He then continued, the matter back then, as well as the words of His Highness Dong Xingting, in addition to the fact that Kei Tianyi doesn't have any time restrictions, this junior can also guess that the matter back then isn't as simple as I thought it to be. Maybe, Your Majesty is intentionally making things difficult for me. Audacious. Dong Xingting stepped out as his killing intent gushed forth. Let him speak. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. Dong Xingting could only halt his steps, but his eyes were still cold as he stared at Qin Wentian. This time around, when I came to participate in the immortal banquet of the Dong Shengshan Gate, I was once again targeted and made things difficult for myself. During the first round, the Dream Demon King extracted my memories. How could I not resist? Naturally, I was ranked last. During the second round, the Devil Statue also had its own consciousness and directly destroyed my will. But even so, I still used my own strength to prove that I'm capable, walking all the way to this step and obtaining the first position. Qin Wentian stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as he continued. Under such circumstances, does Your Majesty think that I would still enter the Dong Shengshan Gate? After I enter the immortal sect, how would I know what kind of treatment I would encounter? At that time, with just a single reason from His Highness, Dong Xingting would be able to consign me to eternal damnation. I came here for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's to temper myself. Secondly, it's to tell Your Majesty that not everyone is willing to take you as their master. Even if I don't take you as my master, I can still sweep through the geniuses of the 13 prefectures. I can similarly sweep through all the geniuses of the Dong Shengshan Gate. Minor characters also have their own strength of character. Their dignity isn't something that can be trampled on so easily. Qin Wentian's voice rang out. His gaze then turned to the Deep Flame Immortal King as he continued. Earlier, the Deep Flame Immortal King hinted to me that some endings are already destined. However, I've also replied to the Deep Flame Immortal King. For some things, you will never know what the ending will be until the end. Now, Deep Flame Immortal King, do you understand the ending? The Deep Flame Immortal King's countenance turned heavy, only to see the Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly replying, marvelous. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto the Deep Flame Immortal Emperor, again only to see the latter calmly staring at him. His imposing eyes were still filled with a powerful might as he spoke. Marvelous, very impressive. However, are you not afraid that I will kill you? As the sound of his voice faded, an even more stifling pressure enveloped Qin Wentian. It felt like as long as the Dongxing Heaven Emperor willed it, he would be able to take his life away. Back then, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepted the request of the Chongqing the Great, and went to a particle world to accept a disciple. He should naturally know that Qing was giving me a chance. However, Your Majesty intentionally targeted me, not being loyal to the Great. Now, I merely refuse to take you as my master. Yet Your Majesty wants to kill me? Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world? Qin Wentian arrogantly spoke. Princess Liuli's beautiful eyes flashed. She seemed to understand the meaning behind Qin Wentian's words earlier. This should be what Qin Wentian wanted to tell her. Chapter 890. Before this, Princess Liuli asked Qin Wentian what was the relationship between Qing'er and Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian told her that she would know in a while. And now, Qin Wentian said that Qing'er actually got her father, Chongqing the Great, to ask the Dongxing Heaven Emperor to accept Qin Wentian as his disciple. From this, one could very well imagine how close their relationship was. When Chongqing the Great fought for the throne, he placed the young Qing'er in his particle world. This was something that Princess Liuli naturally knew about. At this moment, it was very easy for her to guess that Qin Wentian and Qing'er might have an extraordinary relationship. For example, they might be lovers. In that case, the person her father, the White Emperor, predicted should be this man. Given his relationship with Qing'er, in addition to his tyrannical talent, it was very possible that he would be able to influence the fate of the Evergreen Kingdom in the future. To think that after participating in the Dongshengshan Gate's immortal banquet, I would actually find the person I wanted to find. However, the situation he is in now is somewhat awkward. Princess Lioli's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wentian. This fellow rejected the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, smacking his face in public. Leaving aside the fact that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was the overlord of the 13 prefectures, even ordinary Immortal Foundation characters wouldn't be able to endure this. Although the Dongshengshan Gate didn't state that the top 3 rankers of the Immortal Banquet would have to take on the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as their master, but this was the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. The Dongshengshan Gate was a place governed by rules. You came here to participate in the Dongshengshan Gate's immortal banquet and obtain the treasures of the top 3 rankers only to suddenly fall out with them. Princess Lioli didn't know what Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen were thinking. Could it be that they were so naive to think that the Dongshengshan Gate would allow them to leave so easily? Even if the Dongxing Heaven Emperor appeared to be magnanimous on the surface, could the two of them really walk out of East Immortal City alive? An Immortal Foundation expert could easily kill them. As for an immortal king, they wouldn't even know how they died, leaving no traces at all. For example, the Nightmare Immortal King who had always been sleeping. He could even seize the souls and lives of others in his dreams. It was simply too easy for him to kill Qin Wentian and Qin Wentian. The space was still silent. Was Qin Wentian provoking Dongxing Heaven Emperor in public? Courting death. Zhou Yu and the cultivators from the Immortal Palace of War Kings thought to themselves. Their eyes flashed with coldness. Before this, they were worried that Qin Wentian would soar into the sky. But now, it seemed that their worries were groundless. Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen were too arrogant. They didn't know who they were simply seeking death. Mocked by the world, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. I naturally won't kill you guys. However, I have reason to believe that with your talent, there's no need for you to place your hopes on my benevolence. Since you guys are fellow apprentices, can you tell me who your master is? Is he strong enough for me, Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, to let you guys go? The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. Qin Wentian stared at the deep eyes of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. It was as though he could see right through him. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's judgment was very accurate. He and Jun Mingchen naturally understood what they were doing. From the perspective of ordinary people, this would definitely be courting death. If it wasn't for the fact that this was a mission from the Heavenly Talisman realm, they definitely wouldn't have thought of doing this. As for their backing, it was naturally none other than the Heavenly Talisman realm. Since the powerful Heavenly Talisman realm had issued this mission, they couldn't possibly allow them to die at the Dongshengshan Gate, right? Bai Wuya was currently seated right beside the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Even the Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't know of his true identity. He was none other than the senior apprentice brother of Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen. There will naturally be people coming to receive us later. At this moment, a voice drifted into the ears of Qin Wentian and the others, causing Qin Wentian and the others to feel a sense of certainty in their hearts. The owner of this voice was none other than Bai Wuya. This was just as they had expected. Since the Heavenly Talisman realm had arranged this mission, they naturally wouldn't allow them to die at the Dongshengshan Gate. Since this was the case, there was nothing for them to fear. Staring at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, Qin Wentian felt even more ridiculous as he laughed out loud. What a good Dongshengshan Gate. A grand event that happens once every 100 years. But in the end, who would have thought that it would be so dirty? Me and junior apprentice brother Mingchen obtained the top 3 rankings. Yet they refused to leave without acknowledging me as their master. Your Majesty is so magnanimous. How would the people of the world view us? Qin Wentian continued. You are too impudent. The deep flame immortal king's eyes were like the abyss, exuding a terrifying sense of danger. A stifling pressure directly bore down on Qin Wentian. This time around, the deep flame immortal king unleashed a corporeal pressure. With a thunderous boom, Qin Wentian's body was bent over from the pressure, as though he was about to kneel on the ground. Qin Wentian hunched his back, enduring the pressure from the Deep Flame Immortal King as he coldly spoke. Deep Flame Immortal King, earlier you were so arrogant and domineering, constantly humiliating me. But in the end, your useless disciple Blackpeak was killed by me and the top ranker of the Immortal Banquet was also seized by me. Don't you feel any shame for your words? Right now you actually flew into a rage out of humiliation? How laughable. Boom. A terrifying pressure directly blasted onto Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian's body to collapse, directly sprawling onto the ground. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor only watched on quietly, not interfering with the Deep Flame Immortal King at all. I said before that I won't kill you, but I have to know exactly who gave you all the guts to provoke me. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor arrogantly spoke. Shameless. Jun Mingchen stared at Qin Wentian being crushed under the pressure. An expression of rage flashed on his face as he spoke. The Dongshengshan Gate actually treats the top 3 rankers like this? How shameless. How dare you? Yet another towering pressure bore down. With a booming sound, Jun Mingchen's body was also crushed as he sprawled onto the ground together with Qin Wentian. His Highness regards you highly, yet you all harbor malicious intentions in your hearts, intentionally challenging His Majesty's prestige. Such a crime is sufficient to sentence you all to death. There's no need for a reason to kill you all. The Deep Flame Immortal King coldly spoke as his killing intent gushed forth. Isn't it a little inappropriate for the Dongshengshan Gate to act this way? At this moment, Princess Liuli faintly spoke. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's brows twitched, while Dongxing Ting, who was beside him, directly turned his gaze onto Princess Liuli. Princess should be able to tell that these two are here intentionally to create trouble. Not willing to take me as a master means that they are creating trouble? Forgive me for not understanding. Princess Liuli emotionlessly spoke. Junior is a guest today and by right shouldn't speak too much. However, Junior feels that the Dongshengshan Gate's actions have tarnished the prestige of the Eastern Sage Immortal King. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor waved his hands. Only then did the Deep Flame Immortal King retract his pressure. Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen both stood up, coldly staring at the Deep Flame Immortal King. Deep Flame, sons are like fathers, disciples are like teachers. Blackpeak's attitude is narrow-minded, his talent is low, and he thinks he's infallible. But in reality, he's incompetent and can't even withstand a single strike. For this point, I inherited it from you. For this immortal banquet, the one I killed was your disciple. If there's a day when I break through to the Immortal King realm, I'm afraid the person I kill would be you, Deep Flame. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with a demonic light. Although he was smiling, his aura was extremely cold. Back then, the Eastern Sage Immortal King humiliated me in our particle world. Today, I rejected the offer to take him as my master, and I've already returned the favor. But today, us 2 fellow apprentices obtained the top 3 rankings, yet we were humiliated by the Dongshengshan Gate. For this matter, I, Qin Wentian, will remember it in my heart. I, Jun Mingchen, will also remember it. Their voices were firm, and their gazes revealed a strand of the strong and frivolous obsession of youth. Upon staring at the 2 of them, many in the crowd sighed in their hearts. These 2 were truly extraordinary characters. What a pity, they were courting death. However, Bai Wuya's eyes flashed with a hint of gratification. These 2 were truly worthy of being nurtured by the heavenly talisman realm. Remember? The Deep Flame Immortal King coldly laughed. Did they think they could still live for a long time? At this moment, the Deep Flame Immortal King abruptly inclined his head and stared at the sky. His eyes abruptly gleamed with sharpness, shooting straight up into the clouds. Are they here? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor was extremely curious. Who was the master of Qin Wentian exactly? Why would he dare to come to his Dongshengshan Gate to create trouble? Which friend has come to my Dongshengshan Gate as a guest? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke, his voice piercing through the 9 heavens, causing the eyes of everyone to gleam with sharpness. Was there really an extremely powerful character who came here? In that case, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's guess might be correct. Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen dared to do this, It was clear that there was an extremely powerful character supporting them from the shadows. Eastern Sage, you don't even recognize your old friend? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out across the world. It was as if it came from all directions, bringing with it a strange aura that seemed to be everywhere. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor frowned. After that, several silhouettes abruptly appeared in the air. These silhouettes were all the same person, and it was as though there were millions of them. This person was clad in black, had long hair, and a demonic smile could be seen in his deep eyes. Upon seeing the appearance of this person, the countenance of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor instantly turned cold. A formless aura gushed up from below, wanting to envelop this entire space. They're here. Qin Wentian silently mused. The people from the heavenly talisman realm had arrived. Emperor Qianbian. The undying immortal king's countenance also changed when he saw the silhouette in the air. The undying immortal king was extremely experienced, and had lived for countless years. He had even witnessed the chaotic era, when the Dongxing Heaven Emperor unified the 13 prefectures. Emperor Qianbian. When the experts of the Dongshengshan Gate heard this name, the countenances of several immortal kings all changed. They didn't expect that such an ancient character would actually appear before their eyes. It was rumored that the Emperor Qianbian was a powerful opponent of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor back then. In an extremely ancient era, the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures weren't the 13 prefectures yet. There were a few immortal emperors there, and the strongest among them were the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and Emperor Qianbian. After that, the Emperor Qianbian was defeated and disappeared for countless years. Who would have thought that he would actually appear here today? How could this not cause the expressions of everyone to change? The gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wentian and Jun Mingchen. No wonder these people were so outstanding. So it turned out that they were disciples personally nurtured by the Emperor Qianbian, the opponent of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor back then. If this was the case, it wouldn't be surprising if they obtained the top 2 rankings in the Immortal Banquet. If the disciples nurtured by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor participated in this Immortal Banquet, they would also be able to obtain the top 3 rankings. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.